Okay, everybody, let's get started for the Nantucket Conservation Commission meeting for April 10th, 2019. We are recording, so if you're recording, please let us know. And if you could silence your cell phones, it'd be appreciated. We're going to start with the public meeting for public comment for items not being heard tonight. Oh, please.
I'm Terry Norton. I'm a co-owner of property at 26 North Cambridge Street, right on Madison Harbor. And I kind of want to bring it to attention at the meeting when all of the smart people are here, that there seems to have been a drastic loss of the eelgrass beds out front. They're gone. There's nothing there. It's just all sand. Someone suggested it might poke through and the eelgrass come back. But it looks like it's very, very shallow now, going out towards the channel. And it looks like it's running from Little Neck down to the little shoal where the creek comes out, near the Half and Raffers property, if not further around. And I was hoping somebody would keep an eye on it and see if it can come back or if something can be done to bring it back.
Thank you. That's it.
Certainly. That's
Has that been
on our to-do list for
been
the
noted?
summer, not just there, but many other spots as well. So,
You think it's moving sand or something?
in a lot of cases, we've seen sand transport and shoaling cause eelgrass loss. We saw a pretty substantial loss in the Monomoy area from some shoaling. We've seen a lot. I mean, there used to historically be eelgrass populations off the North Shore, even on Lake Dionys and in the Court of the Bay, that have mostly been lost due to shoaling events and sanding. So it's something that does occur. That's the word I used. Does occur. But we'll definitely keep an eye on it and see. I mean, we try to do fairly regular, kind of at least basic mapping of eelgrass areas. And I know that's an area that we had eelgrass in before, so we'll definitely, our water quality staff and shellfish staff will probably keep an eye on that. But we can definitely report back partway through the summer and see if there's anything that's there. And if not, add it into trying to fix.
Okay.
But it's nice, if anyone else sees stuff like that, it's always nice people send that information in or provide that, because sometimes it's
Missed.
nice to know or get that info to kind of target areas that it may have been something that immediately happened or something in response to a weather event or something.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Any other public comment? Okay. So going into the notices of intent, we have two continuances listed here. Town of Nantucket, 4 Bathing Beach Road, continued till May 1st, as well as Booyah LLC, 9 Crow's Nest Way, is also continued to May 1st. So we're going to start with the Hither Creek Boatyard, 20 North Cambridge Street.
I'm going to accuse myself.
Oh, please. Yep.
If I could, Paul,
Please.
Paul Santos, Nantucket Surveyors, on behalf of the applicant, Hither Creek Boatyard. There was some, I guess, confusion on who would be sitting today on the board. So in anticipation of that, we had notified the other concerned group and the attorneys that we would not be going forward today. Unfortunately, we do have a full board, but it's too late now. So we'd be asking to continue that meeting to the 1st, if that is possible.
Mhm.
But I'd like to know, on the 1st, do we expect to have a full board on the 1st?
I'll be here.
Yeah.
I think so.
For some reason, we had on our calendar that a couple of you were going to be away today. And when it reminded us of that, we started sharing that. So just to get anyone prepared or
Right,
make
sorry for
arrangements.
the false alarm, I thought I was gonna be running late,
Well,
but. I hope I
Sadly,
got
you
that.
were not one of the two that we had written down.
One of the two?
No, we had Dave and Ernie down as not being here, but we must have transposed that from
Okay.
March or April wrong or something there. So something happened. So it's our fault. It's not Hither Creek trying to delay or about our concerns. It's
Okay.
we had a clerical error in our.
Yeah, no, in fact,
Office.
we had notified the other attorney earlier because we didn't want to have them come here and then have a problem later on. So unfortunately, I apologize, but we'll see you on the 1st.
Okay, I did want to ask if there was any public comment, only because I know that some people may not be able to since it wasn't
That's a public
posted.
comment that
Hmm?
can't make it on the first.
Can't make it after the, okay. Yeah, for those who can't make it on the next meeting, on the 1st. Can you guys make it for the 1st?
Hi.
Are you guys gonna be able to make it for the 1st?
I can, but I just wanted to give this to you. That was
Sure.
something for
Okay.
the packet.
Perfect.
Okay.
We'll definitely add that.
Of the neighbor.
Okay.
Excellent.
Thank you. My name is Bill Breeder, 10 F Street. For those that don't know what 10 F Street is, it's next to the Walter Barrett Pier. For background, my family's owned that property since 1935 or so, and has been occupying that area, which I reside there. And living on the creek affords me the opportunity, obviously, to daily observe creek activity. But I'm here also as the president of the Nantucket Conservation Association, which was established in 1958, whose mission statement was to foster preservation and of improvement of beaches, dunes, roads, and waterways in Nantucket, blah, blah, blah. And I write newsletters for that organization. Many of our members are in support of this proposal, and many of our members are against this proposal. And so that very reason, our organization has specifically stayed away from any comments one way or the other on this proposal. However, unfortunately, at one of the previous meetings, someone decided to take one of the articles that I wrote for our newsletter and entered it into the discussion as a reason not to go forward with the proposal. So the reason that I'm here is to correct that input. The subject matter of the article was violation of no-wake zones, illegal moorings, illegal floats, pumping of fuel from vehicles to boats at the dock, and commercial boats cleaning fish at the pier. That was what the article was about. And I refer to Nantucket as becoming the new Wild West. The article did not in any way refer to anything that Nantucket Marine was proposing. This was actually before this even entered into it. In fact, it was after the proposal that you approved several years ago, so it was in between. And also, this article was written about the lack of enforcement by the town. And the reason I wrote it was after consulting with the harbor master and her supervisor. They actually asked me to write the article because they're looking for support from the Nantucket residents and other folks in town who are also in our membership, looking for support when they go to increase their budget because it's staffing issues and why there is no enforcement. The only reason people want to go to Nantucket is for sunsets, cocktails, and the beach. Nobody wants to go out to do enforcement. So we've supported this budget increase for increased enforcement across the board, regardless of who you are. And at the end of this past summer, the town did attempt to do that, and they've started going through and identifying illegal moorings. And it's my understanding that they're not only going to continue to do this, they're also going to continue to look at illegal floats and other things that have been left in the creek over the years. And removing these illegal items from the creek, plus the removal of abandoned moorings and floats and objects, can do nothing but enhance the creek activity as well as the boating public. And we and our organization will, in fact, take a stand on that whatever we can do to help facilitate that process, we will be doing so. So I just wanted to correct the record on that so that I can be true to our membership on both sides, that we're, as an organization, are not commenting on this proposal.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, very good. So we will see everyone on the 1st. Okay, so the second item, well, we have to vote to, nope, accept the continuance, okay.
Let's just continue.
Okay, so LHGS Holdings, LLC, 15 Cathcart Road.
Gasparo of Nantucket Engineering here on behalf of the applicant, as is Attorney Cohen. This is the second public hearing for the proposed beach access pathway on the property at 15 Cathcart Road. Since your first hearing, I submitted a revised plan, a letter, and a report from Brian Madden of LEC. We revisited the site, taking into consideration the comments that were provided by the commission with respect to the length of the walkway and trying to maintain contiguous resource area, and relocated the proposed walkway closer to the existing walkway, so we shifted it over. We didn't go all the way to the property line in an effort to, through consultation with Brian, to avoid some dense stands of vegetation. And so we still kept a little bit of a switchback that you see so that we can go just kind of down the hill without having to put stairs where it's a little bit steeper coming straight down, and feel like you know, the first part of it kind of follows a deer trail. And then that was really a lot of the first route altogether. But we made a switch back where we could to come back to the west, back to the east, and have an elevated walkway just across the vegetated resource area. Again, this is the area that floods as related to Pest House Pond, the outfall pipe, the valve, and we again believe that the project is justified and will not have an adverse impact on the protected interests. We hope you agree and with the revisions, and be happy to address questions or concerns that you may have.
So I'm just going to throw in for the record real quickly that it is a spot where we did a field viewing this week with Commissioners Topham, Shampoo, and Bennett present.
Yeah, so seeing the site, the relocated path looked very reasonable. And it, you know, it kind of meandered along the slope, path of least resistance, until it came to, you know, a denser stand. And that's where the elevated walkway is going to be. Or that's where, not the elevated walkway, that's where the path is going to go right through take a right-hand turn, right?
Yes.
So here, and then we're going to have an elevated walkway through part of it. So I guess, you know, if I could speak to it, it looked like a pretty well thought out pathway through there, and it tucking it back sort of towards the edge like you wanted, Ashley. I think made a big difference in, you know, kind of keeping the most of the contiguous.
Yeah, plus the lower end is boggy, you know. I mean, it's pretty mucky but they did drain the pond a bit, so you can walk through it. So actually, I'm sure the neighbors will probably be using the walkway.
I don't know.
Other questions?
I thought it was a better idea.
Yeah.
Design.
Okay. Comments on the public? Okay. Jeff, we have everything we need to close on this?
You do.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good. Thank you. Sheep Commons LLC, 214 Pulpus Road.
Once again, for the applicant, Mark Gasparo, I'm here on behalf of Jeff Blackwell, filed the application. I had reviewed the design of the septic system. This is again the second public hearing for an upgrade of an existing septic system where we're putting the new leach field outside of the 100-foot buffer zone and elevating it, increasing the separation to groundwater. Natural Heritage has signed off, but at the last meeting we didn't have a file number, which we now have. And again, I'd be happy to take questions or concerns.
Any questions?
None here.
Any questions from the public? Comments? Okay. And Jeff, we have everything we need now?
We do.
we have a motion?
Move to close.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Very good, thanks. J.J. McAtee.
Thanks, sir.
Junior, 1996 revocable trust agreement, 220 Pulpus Road.
Good afternoon, Mark Rich from Site Design, representing the applicants at 220 Pulpus Road, and right after this at 226 Pulpus Road for a remarkably similar project. This is a septic upgrade on a rather unusual lot. It has an unusual shape, and it has remarkably extensive wetland resource areas all around it. Most of the lot is within, well, it's all within the 100-foot buffer zone. Most of it is within the 50-foot buffer zone, and quite a bit of it is within the 25. We're proposing to install a new Septitech system with pump chambers just outside the 25 in previously altered portions of the property. And we're proposing to run a force main down the existing driveway across some abutting property where we have utility easement to a portion of our property where we're placing the leach field out of the 100-foot buffer in a tiny area we have outside of the 100-foot buffer. It's pretty much the only place we can put it. We are proposing to sleeve the force main for the portion of the run that is kind of kissing the 25-foot buffer zone, so that'll be sleeved, and it will be unsleeved where it's outside the 25 and 50. Basically, we don't have any other place we can put any of these septic components. We tried to minimize incursions into buffer zones. We're keeping all work within previously altered areas, either lawn or driveway, mostly within driveway and shell parking areas. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
You're gonna have pretty extensive silt fencing, I'm imagining.
We are proposing silt fencing, the orange lines here, basically along portions of the driveway that are close to the wetland. In these areas, there's lawn area that's higher on both sides of the driveway, so we're not proposing silt fence there because we're not anticipating any uphill flow. But where we are very close to the wetland, basically all the orange line on the dashed line on the plan is silt fencing. So we're going to have fairly extensive silt fencing here. It's going to be just, a trench in an existing, kind of down the middle, roughly the middle of the existing driveway. So as minimal an impact as we can make it here to run this line. And we simply don't have another place to put the septic. And we are going from what is essentially a failed, rather old system to a Septitech. So it should be a significant net improvement in treatment, and we are putting the leach facility outside of the 100.
Do you know how far you are away from the little pond over here? Is it far? I'm just worried about still takes and fits.
I think they need a silt fence though.
We have, where we're running here, with the road, there's no,
Okay.
I
think we're far enough away.
Yeah, we're far enough away, and I think the road is up gradient slightly from where we are there.
So, I guess I'm worried that even if it's a little bit of an uphill slope, that something will need to be located in this area to
Well,
demarcate
it's about 3
resource.
feet, 3 to 4
Well,
feet.
it's more the people doing the trenching knowing that they can't move materials that way. Like, there's just,
Well, it's lawn up to here, and it goes uphill. Jeff, you were out there with me. It's probably at least a 2 to 3 foot uphill rise in that section.
At a minimum.
I'm gonna have it sleeved, that's good. raised beds, or I guess it's.
Yeah,
height
yeah.
ground.
Raised bed is
Yeah.
our only option there. And there was one that went in next door,
Yeah.
which is almost identical.
It wouldn't kill anybody to do it, the silt fence around here, wrap that, you're here or you're here.
I mean,
Why
yeah,
don't you just, why don't you just
we-
continue it around the corner?
We could, but there's nothing there to,
Just, I mean, to Ashley's point, just to keep the project contained.
we can certainly do that.
Well, it's all within jurisdiction, so you can,
Yeah, just to keep,
Simply
I like,
condition
I
that.
like the idea of keeping everything sort of contained to the driveway, you know.
That's fine.
Great.
Silt fence is cheap.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this will be, it'll be a pretty quick operation to trench and, and they're gonna fill as they go. They're not gonna open up the
Yep.
whole thing because there are other users of the driveway and whatnot, so they're gonna try to get this thing in
Right.
pretty short order. So we're not anticipating stockpiling all the material for days and weeks on end here.
Yeah, yeah,
could probably even reuse sections of silt fence.
maybe.
Yeah.
Button up one there and flip it down.
Other questions,
Nope.
concerns? Questions from the public? We have everything you need on this one, Jeff?
We do.
Do I have a motion?
Move to close.
All in favor? So, once again, J.J. McAtee, 1996 Revocable Trust, 226 Pulpus Road.
That's right.
Once again, Mark Ritz from Site Design representing the applicants at 226 Pulpus this time. This is a remarkably similar property. It's almost a mirror image of the one we just looked at. And we have a very similar situation here. We have extensive wetlands, extensive buffer zones. We're basically doing the same thing. We're placing a septic system adjacent to the house, previously altered lawn and pathway areas. And we are this time occupying an existing force main. We're not laying a new line. We've got an existing force main that comes down here and it's running about as far away as we can on this lot to the one small area we have outside the 100-foot buffer. So a little bit less disturbance with this one since we do not anticipate needing to replace that existing force main.
Do we know how old it is? Not that I'm an engineer, but.
I'm not entirely sure how old it is. We will be pressure testing it before we reoccupy it. And if we find that we do need to replace it, we will be back before the board. But we're anticipating, we haven't had any problems with that aspect of the system, so we're anticipating that it should be good. If we do need to install a new one, we'll be back here to discuss that.
Okay.
And at that point, it'll be the same as the other project. And again, here, we really have no alternative locations for any of these components. We've tried to put them in areas with, the least disturbance, already existing driveways, walkways, pathways, to minimize any impacts. And we're running it to our only area outside the 100-foot buffer to avoid any waivers on the actual leach facility. And again, it's a septic tech here as well.
Mhm.
So when work area is right, kind of right inside the silt fence there?
Yes.
And nothing else, really, this exists.
Yeah,
to that
this
point or whatever.
exists, and the only other work area is inside this silt fence where we're putting in the new tanks.
Gotcha.
Other questions?
None here.
Questions from the public? We have everything you need, Jeff, on this one?
We do.
A motion?
Second?
All in favor? Okay.
Thing is locked. You're gonna have to get me a new iPad to get my business meeting.
Might really eat that.
Just leave that one.
I don't need to.
With me, and I will.
Do they have some new ones?
I'm sure they do.
Cuneo, 122 Walwinet Road.
If not, we can certainly make that happen. Just want to make sure. Yes, I will take those. Make sure I got the right ones for you.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Jack Vaccaro with Epsilon Associates. Nice to see you all this evening. I'm here to represent Jack and Renee Cuneo, who are the owners of this 1-acre property at 122 Walwinet Road, rather. This is a property that has a problem has developed in recent years with drainage. And the Cuneos are trying to work out a solution here that will restore their ability to safely access their waterfront. They have about 50 feet of frontage along Nantucket Harbor. So from Nantucket Harbor, there's a wide expanse of various wetland resource areas. As we come back from Nantucket Harbor, of course, we have land under the ocean and land containing shellfish, an area of coastal beach, followed by an area of coastal dune. In the low area within the dune, we have a bit of salt marsh, back into coastal dune, bordering vegetated wetland, coastal bank, and finally land subject to coastal storm flowage. So there's a lot going on this site, but it's a relatively simple project, I believe. What's happened here, again, is there's a drainage ditch that crosses the property that it's been a very long time. It services the Walwinet Inn property next door, and there's a drainage pipe that outlets just south of the property. You can see that in this area of the plan.
Mm-hmm.
From that point, the drainage water had historically drained out through that drainage ditch, but what's happened is that ditch has become clogged with sediment and vegetation, and perhaps some shifting of the sands from the dune field. And what's happened is that the water does not travel down the drainage ditch with any efficiency any longer. We get this ponding effect right at the toe of the coastal bank. So the owners would like to be able to just establish a series of boardwalks, 3 spans of 3 sections of boardwalk to carry them across the wetlands and the ditch so that, again, they can get to the waters unimpeded. It's a relatively low-impact project. The boardwalk has been sited to be as close as possible to the existing footpath so that there won't be much disturbance to vegetation out there. It will be supported on 4x4 posts, so obviously there will be some small amount of vegetation disturbed at the point where the posts make contact with the ground, obviously. But beyond that, the structure will be about 30 inches above grade. And we feel that will, at that height, it should allow the vegetation to continue to thrive underneath it, probably improve underneath it where it's replacing the footpath. Other than that, the other aspect of this project is a septic upgrade. There is a septic tank and pump chamber in the front of the house beneath the Cuneo's driveway, and they'd like to replace that septic tank with a microfast unit to adapt it to IA treatment. Just have that done in advance of any future transactions involving the property. So that's it. I can certainly answer any questions you might have about the project in terms of wetland impact. We do feel it does meet all the performance standards for the resource areas that it affects. One other thing I'll point out, the priority habitat that extends landward from Nantucket Harbor does actually impinge upon the small boardwalk that crosses the ditch, extends beyond that, and about half of the middle boardwalk section. So we have submitted a copy of the notice of intent to Natural Heritage for review. They have not returned a comment letter to us, but I did get an email this afternoon from Amy Honig at Natural Heritage indicating that she did not have any issues with this proposal.
copied on that letter, Jeff?
We have not gotten their formal letter at this point.
It's an email that I did forward it to you this afternoon. Jeff, did you see that?
Maybe. I did sneak out.
Okay.
I just pulled up the aerial because I wanted to see the footpath you're talking about. It looks like there's a tremendous amount of like boats getting stored down there, and one like
That one went in.
yeah, right. One looks almost near where this ditch is, where they're gonna cross the ditch, and then that looks like the lower half of their property. Do you know what's going on there?
I don't. When I was out there, I did, and it was
Wow.
about this time last year. I did not see any boats, certainly not in that number,
Yeah.
Okay.
on the beach.
And the
What
one
was
that looks.
that taken, Ashley?
This is just the. It says map date 2019 Google. So,
The current photos from Google were taken
is it this fall?
kind of late summer
Yeah.
last year.
Mhm.
I don't remember the exact date, but
Is there a public access down there?
Not there, no.
Yeah, and even like this one looks like it would be like clearly on their property, so that has to.
No, it's
Stop.
Which
interesting.
one are you looking at? Was this in the packet or are you looking at?
No,
Google
I pulled up an
Earth?
aerial
Okay.
because I was curious.
Okay,
They
got it.
mentioned
Yeah.
the existing path, and there
Gotcha.
wasn't an aerial, so this is just Google.
Yeah, in the air photo that was included with the notice of intent, I do see 3 boats
Looks
that
like
are
some
in the
down
area
there.
north of the site, but not in
Yeah. I
the
mean,
subject
that's-
parcel.
Probably boats up and down this whole thing.
Yeah.
Well, I can put a condition in there for depending on whose property is all that, but huge.
Well, and it looks like it would.
Is there a detail of the boardwalk in the packet somewhere that I'm missing?
On the plan.
No, there is not in the plan, no. Is that something that you need?
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just good to see for spacing on the planks to
Height off the
the available
ground.
light's gonna
Width.
be underneath,
Yeah.
height off the ground.
Sure.
You
There
know,
is a description of the narrative that I can certainly get a cross-section to you.
It seems to me that people have had better luck with helical anchors, especially going through wet areas. They don't tend to sink as much, and they also have a smaller impact there. They only have a kind of rod coming up instead of 4x4. So they seem to have less impact and to be less likely to start to sink. So you might consider.
We can explore that with the owners, and if it's something that's agreeable to them, I think.
There wouldn't be any problem with that, as
Yeah.
far as that concerned, I'm sure.
It's actually a clean way to install it.
Yeah.
It's really-
Yeah, that's what they did, that walkway out,
Can
but
this- can
you guys,
it be done though without mechanical?
That's my thought, is that when I've seen these things installed before, it does require a certain amount of torque, and you have to get like a bobcat in to spin it. At that point, we have equipment entering the wetland.
Right,
Whereas what's being proposed here can be installed with just a post hole digger.
right.
Yeah, that's true.
But the surface material on the boardwalk, kind of where we're landing on that lately, I mean, we talked in the past about the fiber grate being a nice option because it lets the most light through.
According to, Rachel from the land bank came in with some documentation that
didn't make much.
it's really about how high it is
How high
more
it is,
than,
yeah.
height to width more
Okay,
than what it's
because
made
it
of.
gets that gets shaded kind of anyway or whatever. Okay.
Yeah,
So
just-
the height is really the key. You mentioned 30 inches off the ground.
Correct.
Yeah.
So just to formalize what Ernie put in, that was a study that was provided that the Division of Marine Fisheries put together as it related to impacts to salt marshes and eelgrass from docks and piers that's available from them. And it really discussed a lot about how surface material didn't matter as much as height and width and orientation of the structure. They prefer a north-south orientation to allow for that east-west passage of light to be there. Seem to have a greater effect than whether it was wood or fiber grate. So, but that's available. People want a copy of it. We keep a copy digitally in our office. So.
Unfortunately, the orientation of this
Yeah.
site doesn't lend itself
Nope.
to a north-south alignment, but we can talk about spacing of the boards perhaps and might improve the
And
amount of sunlight that's reaching.
The Docks and Piers guidance kind of recommends a pretty similar kind of 1-to-1 ratio of height to width. So if it's a foot wide, to be a foot up. So if this is 30 inches high, that standard would be about a 30-inch walkway. So you're pretty close.
Would the commission prefer a 36-foot high?
I think you get into some, you speak.
Building
36 inch?
Need some guide rails or something.
Yeah, that's not.
Keep it at 30.
Yeah, exactly.
Think of the HDC at this point.
It starts getting into it.
Yeah, that becomes more visible and all that, yeah.
It's a recommendation, so it's not like it's a statutory requirement. But I think if you were talking about it being like 10 inches off the ground and 36 inches wide, that's a much different discussion.
A little flexibility.
Well, I think it's probably a net improvement on the
Yeah.
resource area.
Yeah, sure.
So that's, I don't have any problems with it.
Yeah.
Are you gonna try, like, cause it looks like the existing path maybe goes off property, are you gonna try and cut a path through the salt marsh to direct people, or are they just gonna take their own path once they get further down?
The,
Is there existing one?
Yeah, on the plan, it looks like
Not
the
really.
existing path maybe goes off.
yeah, I think you're right. At this point, it does go off.
Right.
And so the owners would want to establish a walking path down to the water on their land. I don't know if any of you during the site walk got down to that point on the property, but this is a high marsh situation. It's not like it's not subject to daily tides, let's say, but it is below the spring tide elevation, and there's a fair amount of paytens in there. So I think it's evident in one of the photographs that were included in your package. You can see the change in the color of the vegetation. But my point is that it's a as salt marshes go, it is a fairly firm footing. It's not as though it's going to be quickly.
Yeah.
I guess I'd just like to see where people are gonna go after the second proposed boardwalk, so that we don't have every time people are going, we're walking a different path and eventually really wearing down this resource area.
I see.
Are you looking at, actually, are you looking at this dark line? Is that what you're looking
I think that's the
That's the
ditch,
ditch, right?
but I was
Yeah.
looking at, on the plan, you can see where the existing path goes off property.
Yeah.
Existing footpath.
at? Oh, gotcha, okay, yeah.
So there isn't really anywhere for people to go.
Once they get across.
Yeah, and
Doesn't like
I'm,
another option.
That makes sense, yeah.
Well,
So
Yeah.
we will be submitting a plan revision to show the section of the boardwalk. We can also include in that plan a representation of where that future walk
A
would
route.
be.
that would
That'd
be
be cool.
great, thank you.
that'd be great. Okay. Anybody, anything else that you're interested in? Good. I'll ask for questions from the public. Any questions from the public on this one? Okay, so you want to continue for 2 weeks?
Please,
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
thank you.
I think it's even 3 weeks.
It's actually 3 weeks.
3 weeks?
Yeah, we had to do 3 because we were trying to get around school vacation week, and
No.
we ended up with 2 3-week ones back to back to
He's
this.
fine with
June
me.
1st, I think.
May 1st.
I mean, May 1st.
Slow down.
Yeah, we got off schedule by having this town meeting last week and then dodging school vacation.
Yeah,
following.
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you much. Okay, Nantucket Conservation Foundation, Medowie Creek and 5 Quays Pasture Road.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hello. I'm Dr. Jen Harburg. I'm the Research Program Supervisor with the Nantucket Conservation Foundation, and I'm also a wetland ecologist. And I am here today because we were looking at doing a research project.
Yeah, you can just put them up there.
So please.
We're looking at doing a research project in some salt marshes. One is a salt marsh that the Conservation Foundation owns and we have done research on in the past. We actually did a restoration project out there. And then another is a private piece of property where the homeowner has expressed interest in the research work that we're doing. So both of these salt marshes are located in Pulpus Harbor. One is Medowie Creek, which is the larger one that's here with the yellow. And then the other is in the western lobe of Pulpus Harbor. And both of these salt marshes are experiencing what's called salt marsh dieback. And so it's something that we've started to see here on Nantucket in the past 5 or 6 years. They experienced it in the mainland about 10, 15 years before we started getting it here. But what's happened is there's a native crab, a native purple crab that lives in the marsh system. It's Sesarma reticulata. It's been here, it's supposed to be here, but something has shifted that has caused the populations to dramatically spike and increase. And when the crab populations increase, they start eating the Spartina, which is the Spartina alterniflora, the salt marsh cordgrass that grows closest to the edges of the salt marsh. And what they actually do when they're eating it is they aggressively eat it so that actually the roots and the whole plant itself is gone. And you have these in your packets, but you can see the bottom picture that's kind of at the end of our packet is Medowie Creek. And we have huge expanses of what is now just exposed salt marsh soil, where there's absolutely no vegetation at all. And so these crabs come in, they start eating, and they eat everything in sight, and they don't even give the vegetation a chance to grow back again. So we have it very dramatically at our Medowie Creek property. Some other places in Pulpus are starting to experience this as well, but not quite as aggressively. And what they've seen on the Cape and other places is that about 10 years down the road, the crab populations start to go down and the grass comes back. But by the time it comes back, where you've lost so much sediment, the salt marshes have eroded, they've decreased, so you think you've got rising sea level and decreasing salt marshes. It's not a good picture. And so what we're hoping to do is potentially get ahead of that 10-year cycle. And so what we'd like to do at these two sites is do extremely targeted trapping and removal of those native crabs from these particular salt marshes that we're in, while at the same time planting out pockets of cordgrass. And we're not proposing to plant the whole area. We want to plant in plots that we can monitor. And in those plots, we'll monitor, we'll monitor, are we actually impacting the crab populations, and are we able to decrease them in one location, or is that just something that we're not going to be able to do on our own? And if we are then decreasing those crab populations and planting out the grass, is it getting a chance to reestablish itself? And so we're kind of hoping we can jump over that area where we have 10 years of exposed salt marsh just sitting there. So what we're proposing at these two sites is to go out and do trapping of the crabs. We'll trap them, every 3 days, every week during the summer, so it'll be an extremely intensive system. We'll go out and we'll look at the populations before we start, so kind of just get a number of the density of the crabs there, and then we'll look again at the end of the summer season, and then we'll plant out the Spartina as well, and then we'll monitor that, and we'll look for browsing. We'll go out, I think we said every other week in the summer, and go out and see how much of it survives, if it's expanding outside of the areas that we're planting it in, and see if we can just track a potential success of hopefully revegetating and planting in these areas. And I should say we've monitored crab populations here. We did it 3 years ago where we monitored them at this Medowie Creek property, and we also did it in Nantucket, and the crab populations are low in Nantucket where there is no dieback, and they're extremely high at these locations. So we have a base point we can refer back to as we go.
Are they any good to eat?
That was gonna be my
Well,
question. Are they like chum or
They're
something?
not. They're really small, so there's not a lot of meat in them. But I've reached out to. What was that?
You got a lot of them, so.
You can get a lot of them. I've heard people have used them for stock. Apparently, you can use them for stock. So I've actually spoken to 100-mile makers, and the state has indicated that the best way to kill them, because that was my question to them, was how to humanely deal with this, is to freeze them. So we're going to try catching them, freezing them, and seeing if There are some groups that might want to use them, say, for
Crab cakes or
a native invasive dinner event on the island. We'll see. I don't know. Maybe we'll start a new.
Nantucket escargot.
It could be marketable.
All
So-
ears.
They have no natural predators, is that?
Well, and this is the research that has happened on the Cape and some other places. So this phenomenon has been very highly researched in Rhode Island, particularly. And what they think has happened is that there's been increased fishing. So they do have predators, but their larger fish tend to eat these
Gotcha.
crabs.
Okay.
And so there's been a shift in the fish populations, and something has increased overfishing in a particular area, or if the nutrient balance has changed and the fish aren't using the resource the same way any longer, then once they've disappeared, then the crabs spike up. There is, I probably shouldn't say this, but apparently the green crabs, which are invasive, and looking back at monitoring those, but the green crabs are apparently eating the purple crabs. We haven't seen them in Pulpus Harbor yet, and we're not going to introduce them.
But the green crabs eat everything else, right?
They eat everything
Right.
else. Yeah, they're a little too aggressive for that.
Yeah. And we don't have them on the island yet.
Oh, no,
The
we
green
have
crabs,
lots of green
no.
crabs.
Oh, we have, that's what I
We
thought.
have
They
those.
are everywhere.
But I don't think we've observed them in Pulpus Harbor yet. As far as I know. Not yet.
It's one of the things with green crabs that I know we've pursued, and kind of piggybacking on, not to get into a different research project that the Land Council and Mariah Mitchell have been working on, is potentially developing a secondary market for green crabs, because the big problem that you get is you can catch them all, but unless you're doing it just out of the goodness of your heart, you're not even offsetting the cost of the fuel and traps to go out and get them. So I know we had Carl Sherlin trap crabs for a year pretty heavily, and he ended up giving them away to a couple of the local farms to try to use as fertilizer, and no one really liked it, and there's nowhere for him. So unless he goes out there just to do it, I mean, they tried it for bait for conch pots for those guys, and didn't really work very well.
Tom Proch in high school culinary might be.
Well, they talked
interested.
about it, and people have started to use it to do, kind of a crab or fish stock. They've included green crabs and something in it, but the market has to be there for a lot of those things, or else it's hard to incentivize people to go out and collect them. And you can get pretty good numbers if you go, so stay tuned. There may be something that you see coming forward for
We see green and purple crabs
for both
on
these
the,
teams.
Got some great color to the clam bake.
Exactly. If only we could just train all of the green crabs to eat only purple.
Only purple. So far, that solution hasn't appeared, so
No.
we're proposing this.
Jen, where will you get your Spartina to replant in there? Are you gonna try to use local source?
I can't get Nantucket stuff because nobody's growing it here. And we didn't have this plan in place in order to collect seed. There'd be the potential if we did this in future years to collect local seed and try and get a greenhouse to grow it. I have a list of a couple, local, New England local that have been recommended to me, so that's what we're looking at. There's someone in Biddeford, Maine that grows Spartina for restoration work a lot, so I think that's most likely who we'll use. But that's kind of as close as we can get.
And you think you'll be able to scale this up to sort of meaningful?
Well,
right?
the most aggressive dieback that we have right now is really concentrated in these areas in Pulpus Harbor. So I kind of think if we can at least scale it up to meaningful refugia areas. So Medowee Creek is one of the larger areas that has this dieback. And if we can even just get a couple areas along the creek edge that have vegetation and we're controlling the crab populations at the same time, I think it's worth doing out here. Some of the researchers that I reached out to with this idea said, oh, well, that's just ridiculous. But they're operating on the mainland where all of the salt marshes are experiencing this. We kind of have an enclosed system where we could at least hopefully hold things at bay, is my hope. But it'll all depend on what this summer looks like. If we're just trapping the crabs and they keep coming in from somewhere else because we're planting, good Spartina, it might not be effective. But we'll have to see what the results look like after this year.
If the project's moving in a positive direction, could you get the seed and then grow it for next year?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Definitely, I think we could. There's there are a couple landscaping companies that have said, or I'm sorry, greenhouse companies that have said if we could do local seed and wanted to, or they could grow it out for us. So if this looked really successful, then that's something we could definitely scale up for next year.
Cool.
It'd be nice too if it did work, if we identified other areas to be able to mimic what was going on, if it's successful in areas that come up. Provided to homeowners that have salt marsh. I know we looked at a project just last week in Village Way, Loretta Lane area that had some salt marsh tieback. That if these programs work and they're cost effective, it's something that hopefully we can see copycatted over time. So.
Definitely.
Good luck.
Thanks. You guys can come out and do some field work if you want.
So I will say,
Might be sending a student your way.
Absolutely.
this is within mapped habitat areas.
Yeah.
So we have not gotten our comments back from Natural Heritage yet.
Okay.
So we'll have to carry
Continue.
it forward
Yeah.
until we get those. I can't imagine what they're going to say, but I think if you guys have direction for a permit, then we can get it out the door next time, if that seems to be, everyone's generally in favor of it.
For sure.
Yeah.
To be fair, they're really only applying for us to plant Spartina.
Yeah.
The crab piece falls more within the Division of Marine Fisheries than it does within the Wetlands Protection Act, so.
Crabs.
And they should be submitting a letter to you. I have email confirmation from them that they are fine with the crab trapping and removal, but they should.
They have a hard time getting from emails to formal letters a lot of times. That happens a lot.
Other questions or thoughts?
That temper is
Curious
on.
follow-up, how often, like summertime or in the summer?
What was that?
Follow-up, just curious, I'm kind of curious, like how.
Yeah, definitely, and I'd be happy to come back, and, you know, we'll obviously submit, we like to make sure we submit our reports every single year for our permits, but I'm also happy to come back and report or take people out to see how it actually worked. It would probably be, I'd say fall time.
Maybe there's some volunteer opportunities.
And yeah.
Just throwing it out there.
Got your buck boots.
Let's go.
Yeah, it'll be
You got
fun.
This is fun.
The crab trapping will be the most fun part, but we will need volunteers most likely for the Spartina planting as well, so.
Okay. Any questions from the
That's
public on
pretty
this?
deep mud around there, isn't it?
It's actually
be.
still pretty firm in most
Is it?
places, which is
Okay.
partly why I want to do it now. It's like if you get out there, the peat it's riddled with holes from all of the crabs tunneling through
Yeah.
it, but it's holding up very well. It hasn't like started to completely decompose, but that will continue to change in the next couple of years. as
Right,
the
that's not
oxygen
gonna
gets in there.
recover so easy, no.
Yeah, exactly. So the sooner we at least try it, the better.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, were there any questions from the public on this? Okay, so we'll continue for 3 weeks?
All right.
3 weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jen.
Just to, are you guys
Good
looking
to see you, Jen.
for a
You
positive
don't
draft
wanna
order
Oh,
on
I
that
there
too?
to come
don't think
back
there's a
on the other
problem there,
side.
yeah.
I am not coming back on the other side of that table anytime soon.
Oh, come on.
You're missed.
I know.
Kids give you kind of an old excuse here.
That's all small kids. Maybe you're gonna see.
Bowling you too, Vince?
Come on.
Teach them to catch crabs.
Yeah, if you need someone to catch crabs, I have a couple of volunteers that would be really good at it.
So David L. Douglas Trust, 20 Fulling Mill Road.
For the applicant, Jeff Sparrow, Nantucket Engineering. I'm before you tonight with a septic system upgrade project proposed within the buffer zone to bordering vegetated wetland. This is within the Nantucket Harbor Watershed District. We have a failed system, so we're looking to upgrade it in maximum feasible compliance with your regulations, and the department regulations. And what we're proposing to do is abandon the existing system and add new septic tank, microfast system, an elevated leach bed, which will need some retaining walls because we have such a limited area. We're also putting in a new well, which would be within your jurisdiction, such that we can get the required 100-foot separation distance for the well to the septic system. So shown in red is a lot of red is the septic components. As you can see, we're on the opposite side of the house from the wetland, and there's really no other real alternative here other than potentially tight tank, which I don't think is an alternative, a preferred alternative, or even possibly marketable, given that we have this option. So we have kept it outside of the 50, but it is within the 100, so it needs a waiver, which we believe is justified under a net benefit, long-term net benefit.
Right. So that's the existing system was there too, right?
Yeah, same number of bedrooms. And
Are you ripping out the old system?
the leach trench, no.
Staying.
The leach trench we'll just abandon. You'll do more, there's no need to go disturb all that soil. The existing tank may be, Title V will require, it has to be pumped empty, the bottom ruptured, and then it can be crushed and filled. In this case, it's so close to the tank we're putting in, I won't be surprised if the contractor if they pull it out.
Yeah.
Is that like a retaining wall or something that needs to come out?
So there is an existing wood retaining wall, and there's also an existing stone retaining wall, which follows the, sort of that walkway. So we'll take, half of that stone retaining wall out, the wood wall, same thing, half of it out. And then we've tried to keep the wall so that it's under 30 inches so that you don't need railings and that sort of thing. Again, you can see that on, your surface elevations are around 12, and the top of the mound's gonna be around 15. We can slope down from the mound a little bit to get you top of your wall, which shows 14.2. So we're not talking about a giant mound, but it will be fairly obvious, I think, what's there. Yeah.
Yeah, that looks pretty good. Best you can do.
I do believe it is
Yeah.
given, the other thing we have, of course, is, there's the well across the street that we have to stay the 100 feet for, and we're actually taking out our own well and putting in a new one just to make this area available
Yep.
further from the wetlands. I'd shown down by BBW 13, right along the edge of the road.
Near the old leach trench.
Right.
Yep.
Well, and obviously the drill well, we're gonna be pulling water from much deeper, but that's what we've kind of had a flip-flop here, in order to get further from the wetlands. If we left the well where it was and went with the existing septic, we'd be within the 50.
Yeah.
So at least we got out of the 50, which I thought was a better balance.
Questions or concerns? No. Okay. Any questions from the public? Okay. Jeff, we have everything you need on this one?
We do.
Okay. Have a motion?
Close. Second?
All in favor? Good.
Thank you.
Yep. Pockmore Road Nominee Trust, 72 Pockmore Road.
Thanks, sir. What's that? Yes, just want to make sure I'm giving you the correct ones. April 4th, April 4th.
Good afternoon, Brian Madden from AC Environmental, local lead, representing the applicant's current property owner. I think 2 meetings ago, there was an RDA before you for a new well on the property. And at that point in time, Jeff Blackwell had indicated that we'd be back before you to address some unauthorized brush cutting activity that was conducted on the property. The extent of the brush cutting is depicted on the plans before you in 3 distinct pockets, and then a kind of series of walking paths. where it was just kind of singular cut, brush cut, that did extend below the coastal bank and into a portion of the BVW. Within all areas that were brush cut, there wasn't any grubbing taking place, so the root systems are in place. Currently there's no excessive slash that's going to prevent regrowth from happening. The majority of the vegetation that was cut was bayberry, with sporadic groundsel tree, arrowwood, Virginia rose, and scrub oak.
This meeting is being video and audio
So,
recorded. We have.
what I would recommend is just a light raking, and then just monitoring to encourage regrowth for these areas over a 3-year period. I'd have to imagine it's going to come back pretty robustly. There's no excessive invasive species on the property that I observed. I think less than a handful of bush honeysuckle shrubs, so not a great concern for invasives to take over the area. But we'll implement BMPs if there's a need to address any invasive species. Proposing monitoring on a yearly basis for 3 years to ensure that the successful restoration. In order to help kickstart that or provide some physical demarcation, the property, Arthur can correct me, I think there's a closing on Friday.
Thursday, tomorrow.
So we wanted to get in here before that. The new owner is going to be responsible for seeing this through. But as part of the measures to ensure that this area isn't brush cut again or encroached upon, we are proposing a series of permanent markers in the form of 4x4 posts at the edges of the areas to naturally revegetate. Those areas are, we've spec'd out the markers on the proposed plan. As part of the monitoring, we would comment on ensuring that there's no future encroachment and the markers are being maintained. Beyond the 4 kind of general restoration areas, we did select an area where we're actually going to do some proposed planting. That area is currently has some stockpiled soils and veg clippings that even historically, looking back at some of the aerials dating back beyond the 90s, had been utilized, but there may have been some encroachment further to the south and with some change of flood zones. Now a portion of it does occur below the flood zone. There's no coastal bank in this area because the slope is less than 10-to-1 and we're outside the 25-foot for the area. But basically we're going to remove the material, assess whether or not any additional topsoil is necessary underneath. My presumption is that they just dump soil on top so we can scrape it, hopefully not need to introduce anything, and then just replant with high bush blueberry, arrowwood, I think is the specs that we needed. This is the only area that I would think that we may need some temporary irrigation, and kind of the standard specs the commission has been integrating, would certainly be commensurate with this. With this area, and we're also proposing some additional permanent markers there to ensure that that area is left alone and left alone to naturally revegetate. One other component of this project, because of the closing coming up, there is one small facet of actual work. There's a infiltrator within the outer 100-foot buffer zone that collects roof runoff that is to be installed just outside the driveway, but that's all within developed areas. It straddles the 100-foot buffer zone.
It had to be moved from a location up by the house because it was in the zoning setback, the air conditioning unit is connected with it.
Well,
So who was responsible for this?
yeah, and was there an enforcement on you guys?
No.
This was basically discovered by Jeff Blackwell when he was out working on the site. We brought Brian in to deal with it. The owners had no idea that they'd done anything wrong.
Honestly think it's time that we require whoever's doing this poor work to start coming in for an education piece. Like homeowners need to start giving up the landscapers, because this is a very obvious resource area.
Our client in this case has his own staff. It wasn't a company that he hired. It was his own people.
Almost even
Well,
worse.
Yeah.
I'm glad it was brought to our attention.
Yeah.
So from that point of view, I really can't argue. So we do have these secondary issues. I guess they're primary, but
Yeah, I mean,
nonetheless, I don't want to stop you from bringing it to our attention, obviously, so.
not to make excuses or,
Right.
I haven't asked these questions, but,
Yeah.
someone is just looking at this may not know what resource areas are in play because it's the flood zone that creates the coastal bank. They didn't, aside from this area over here, they didn't cut into a wetland.
Yeah.
They're pretty close over there too.
Yeah, I mean, offsite. But, yeah, I mean, it is what it is. I think, we're just trying to fix it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the
No,
new
that's
owners are
good.
fully aware of it.
Right.
And whatever additional conditions will be implemented.
I mean, obviously, there will be ongoing monitoring regardless of whatever happens on this, and there's an arrangement between the present owner and the future owner. Well, obviously, it'll be the responsibility of the present owner to pay for whatever has to be dealt with in connection with this.
And Brian, can you point out on plan where the markers are going to be going?
Yeah, I couldn't.
Yes,
are they
sorry,
the blue-
it's the
are they
blue
the
little squares.
Thank you.
Okay, got it.
So we've kind of like in these three little sections, took the end points and then like a midpoint, and they're spaced out like less than 50 feet, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, do they need to mark like the whole edge of lawn
Well,
so that this doesn't happen again?
I guess, with the 4x4 posts, just trying to demarcate the areas to naturally regrow. And I didn't state this. The easterly area doesn't have a coastal bank, but we are just going right up to the driveway there. For the second and third areas, that is maintaining the 25-foot off of the top of the coastal bank. And then all the paths are proposed to be left alone to revegetate.
They've got a phone booth on this property?
I didn't see that.
Maybe the only one left in Nantucket.
In Massachusetts, possibly.
Maybe the whole country.
Another one on the island. Somebody's yard.
There's one.
I saw one, I was like, whoa.
Okay. Other questions?
None here.
Thoughts, concerns? Okay. Questions from the public on this? No. Okay, Jeff, do we have everything you need on this?
Yes, we do. All right, I moved to close.
Do you have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Thanks for bringing it in, Brian.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
And Arthur, thank you for bringing it in. Clean it up.
New one got a quick education at Nantucket Concom. I said the new one got a quick education in Nantucket Concom.
Yeah, really.
Okay, Andrew Biggio, 155 Wauwinet Road.
Those are just the two. I just got nervous when there was a sticky note on the one.
For the applicant, Rick Gasparo, before you tonight with a notice of intent application that has a couple of facets I'd like to review with you. This project, many of you are probably familiar with, was for fixing up a structure out here at 155 Wildwinet Road. We had an order of conditions that allowed for lifting the house up, putting a new foundation underneath it, and essentially renovating it. And we had some changes in terms of decks that surrounded the structure and walkways and that sort of thing. There was a series of existing retaining walls, which were, quite old, various types, posts and pieces of plywood and that sort of thing, which had been done over time to try to keep the sand off of the house itself, around the area immediately surrounding the house. The order of conditions that we had has expired, and the work that has been done involves construction of a new retaining wall. And the retaining wall, there was approval for a retaining wall to replace the other walls. The contractor misunderstood found a different wall when he was excavating out to do the work on the house, and built the new wall where the old wall was, but it wasn't at the location of the approved retaining wall. So there's about a 4-foot difference between the wall that was constructed and the wall that was approved to be constructed around the perimeter of the house. And then there is a wall that was built around the side of the garage. I'm told that there was old concrete block walls that they had encountered when they were working on this, and removed all that debris and put these walls in, thinking that they were allowed to, under the approval of replacing the walls. That being said, the work did occur within the approved limit of your work. So we show the approved and existing fence that they had put up, and they thought that they were all set working within that area. They did not expand the deck, or they removed the deck that they thought they were going to extend over to the wall, and so the decks are per the approved plan. We're here asking tonight for newer conditions, which allows the constructed walls to remain, as well as to propose a new upgraded IA septic system in place of the existing septic system, which is functioning and does not have to be replaced. It's a conventional system. We're just outside the Harbor Watershed District, so it wouldn't have to be an IA system. We are completely within, coastal dune and mapped barrier beach, so we're increasing the elevation for the separation distance to groundwater and adding IA treatment, which we believe is a benefit to the protected interests. All disturbed areas would be planted with American beach grass, clean sand. There is a conservation restriction on the property, and the septic system's going within that allowed area. The area between the deck and the wall would, just be planted with sand there, with beach grass, in the sand. We're not trying to, there's no lawn areas on this site. We're not trying to increase sort of a manicured or landscaped area, if you will. As I see it, the shift of the wall of the 4 feet it's the same structure. It's just that it's 4 feet further away. It's the thickness of the wall, excepting the piece that was put in around the garage. I didn't know about the concrete block walls when we did our original survey, because they were buried in the sand, and the sand was all up against that garage. And that's the application before you. It's a It is unique. We believe that there's, no adverse impact to the protected interests by the shifted wall. And that the septic system upgrade will provide an overall long-term net benefit that far outweighs the shift of the wall. With that, I'd be happy to try to address questions or concerns that you may have. And we will need to continue for natural heritage so that, in case there's information or something else that you want.
Here,
So that was demonstrating soil testing.
okay.
As well as I wanted to show the area where the septic system is gonna go. So, sandy soil and.
Yeah.
So you said the wall's like you said the other day, 4 feet?
4 feet, yeah, is.
Over from where it was supposed to be?
Right.
It should have been flush with the deck.
It was flush
then.
with the deck.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And it's the same height as it should have been?
It's hard to say. The other wall was so
Very.
beat up that it wasn't like a wall that you could measure. It was, done for years and years where they just, over time, put pieces of things in there to stop, the sand.
Yeah.
That every winter out here, the sand piles against the houses.
All existing in this approved work envelope, I think you mentioned.
Right, and I show the green proposed silt fence is related to the septic system. So that doesn't exist right now. That work would occur outside of what you previously approved, just to be very clear about it. But the work associated with the structure and the walls, we had come in for an amended order, that you may recall a couple of years ago, that established that level of area of disturbance. Because what had happened was we did the original permitting, contractor gets hired, says, I can't actually do this work, that it was so tight to the house, and again, the sand had piled in. We got permission to move that sand. We actually got permission from you to put it along the dune, along the beach side. And then in doing so is when he uncovered these walls, these other walls that ran parallel to the house, is what he's explained to me. I wish he would have called me. I found the walls, doing a survey, and said this isn't exactly where they were supposed to be. And so that's why we're here.
It's amazing out here. Well, people see deadlines and they just want to get it done, so they don't think to make a phone call or to slow down or.
Surveyors maybe don't have the best reputation as always getting right out there either. We do our best, but if they called, they would have, not to make light of it. But I didn't know, until we saw it. But they're also, they did operate under, we had an order of conditions that was specific to allow the replacement of retaining walls where the other walls were. And that's where the confusion, that went around the house, that were parallel to the house.
Yeah.
So I don't believe that it was intentional. I know he wouldn't have taken that risk.
Yeah, no.
So.
Right, but that'd be a big risk to take.
Yes.
I would say for the record, in backup, if your surveyor cannot make it on a timely basis, that our office is also available for a call.
Yeah.
And between both parties, one of us may be able to get there to help answer that question as quickly as possible.
So the dead men's on this wall?
Yes.
Are the what?
Dead men.
Oh.
So,
perpendicular.
Every so often there's a 6x6 timber, so that it doesn't come tipping over.
Hopefully those were.
So they basically increased the perimeter around the
Hopefully those
house.
were also in the list.
They did.
That extended a little bit beyond.
But the usable area is really the same deck.
Yeah.
It's not, and I honestly think that with time, that wall's gonna get buried the way the other ones did, and you're gonna have a slope from the top of the wall down to the deck that's gonna be
I'm
full
sure.
of sand. Every winter, every spring, they're gonna come in and have to shovel the sand off of the deck, but they're not gonna dig out all
get tired.
All the way
of
down
that, right?
for that weird
So,
dip. Yeah.
Which is true of all these homes north of the inn. I mean, or not every house north of the inn, but once you get up to these last 6 or so, they're so exposed. There's regular maintenance of the sand against, not dissimilar to like down at Cliffside.
We look back at a couple of these filings. We've done a few of these houses over the last few years, and every one of them is consistent where part of the narratives have been a seasonal removal of sand from the rear of the house and the sides of the house, where it's been going. So it's just an uncommon situation for the sand moving.
Yeah.
Gritty situation.
Other questions? No? Any questions from the public? Quiet public. Okay.
Save it.
Can I request a continuance to May
Please.
1st then?
Yeah, sure. So we'll continue for 3 weeks. Thanks. Dion Beleg, 137 Pulpus Road. Dion Beleg.
Thank you. For the record, Paul Santos with Nantucket Surveyors, representing the property owner and applicant, Alan and Erin Diombaleg. The property is located at 137 Pulpus Road. It's an existing developed residential lot that is serviced by a common access driveway off Pulpus Road. The resource area on site is a small isolated vegetated wetland, which is located in a low spot in the central portion of the property. There is also another area to the north of the property, adjacent to the bike path by Pulpus Road, but that area has not been flagged and has no bearing on what this present application is for. The application is a notice of intent for the proposed construction of an in-ground swimming pool with associated grading, landscaping, utility installation, and a septic system component upgrade within the buffer zone to the isolated vegetated wetland. The area itself, the proposal does not require any waivers. Work is proposed is within the 100-foot jurisdictional setback. It is, however, outside the 50-foot no build and the 25-foot no disturb. The existing site is serviced by a well and septic system. It's a fully compliant system. It passes. It passed a recent inspection, meets the groundwater separation distance. It is a compliant system. The site, however, is in the Harbor Watershed Protection District. And based on the access area to where the pool would be constructed, we're going to be disturbing enough of the area where we thought at this point we might as well put in an IA system component as, again, it's in the Harbor Watershed. If any building permit is pulled in the future, or if a property is ever sold, it's going to have to be upgraded to the IA, so the owner's decided to go ahead and put that tank in now while he's potentially going in and do the work for the pool. So that would involve just replacing the existing 1,500-gallon septic tank with an IA processor and connecting into the existing leaching trench. The work itself takes place to the west of the existing structure, which is an area that is currently occupied by an existing deck and then a small portion of a lawn area. So it's an area of the site that's already currently developed. They're simply going to remove the deck, construct the pool, and the hardscape associated with it. The site itself is actually elevated approximately 20 feet above the isolated wetland in question. It's a fairly steep site. So the isolated wetland sits about 20 feet below actually where the house and the pool construction would occur. To the west of or to the east of the existing isolated wetland, there is also a man-made pond. It's a lined pond that's existed on the property for some time now. That's also delineated on the plan itself. We do not have any concerns with, under the Mass Endangered Species Act, the actual mapping goes around the perimeter of this property. We do have a DEP file number that has been issued. David Haynes delineated the isolated vegetated wetland, and there is a report that David prepared along with the requisite data forms have also been filed with the application. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have regarding the submittal. Access, and one other thing, access to the site will be to the southern portion of the lot. You'll see where there's an existing gravel driveway, as an access easement. Construction activity will all take place to the south of that existing dwelling. There'll be no work, or no vehicles, or change in the grade or vegetation to the north side of the existing dwelling. Access will be completely to the back side. Happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Are they gonna remove the deer fence that's going right through the wetland?
Yes, I believe the deer fence is going to be coming out. The deer fence came about, if you remember, the property to the west, I believe, was in here for some enforcement action or some restoration activity.
Two properties.
Actually, this property, I don't think was part of that, but as part of the inspections for that, the deer fence was discovered in this area, and the deer fence will be removed outside of that, through the wetland area that it goes through now.
I think from our end, if this were to gain a positive, we'd probably suggest a condition that prior to the start of work on the rest, that the deer fence be removed. Just as kind of the...
And they are proposing an
carrot for
auto
the
cover
donkey.
for this component, although they do have room outside the 50 to put a full, to fence this, but they have proposed an auto cover.
They can't just swim in their man-made pond.
I'm not sure that man-made pond is very deep.
That's probably pretty gross at this point.
It is clearly lined, though.
Just one thing that I don't see, Paul, is some silt fencing on the top.
Yeah,
of the
there is
silt.
actually, if you look, in the legend, you have the line with the double Xing in there. There is.
Oh, okay, yeah, I got you.
It's
Yeah,
in the
I
middle
see it
there.
now. Okay, yeah.
It is down on the low side.
Yeah, okay.
It's on the low side of the slope, because we have to get down farther enough just to get into the D box when we rerun the line for the septic.
Okay, yeah, I see it now, thanks.
Other questions? Okay. Got any questions from the public? Okay. Jeff, we have everything we need?
We do.
Move to close.
Go second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, amended orders of conditions. Nantucket Island Land Bank, 63 Nantucket Road, formerly 21 Crooked Lane. Paths.
Rachel Freeman, representing the Nantucket Land Bank.
It's up to you. So if you want to use that, or if you brought your own, you can use your own. Certainly not going to stop you.
This is an amended order of conditions. The original order of conditions was to permit all the boardwalks that are shown here in blue on the Cassidy property, which the Nantucket Land Bank acquired in 2016. It is no longer Crooked Lane. It is now known as 63 Nantucket Road, which is a small detail but could be a point of confusion. We had originally permitted a series of boardwalks over wetlands that we believed were the wettest of the wetlands. And in revisiting the property, because we had a little bit of confusion about the project and what everyone was looking for, we were looking at a new trail connection, and in the process found that there might be one additional boardwalk that would be necessary to try and keep the wetlands a little safer and people a little safer. So that's the 130-foot boardwalk that you see here. Also proposed is a small trail connection, which is allowing people to access really only foot traffic because there's no proposed parking. The other end of Wannacomet Road, which is over here. And the premise there is that actually if you continue along Westchester Street, it's exceedingly wet. But if you put in this other single track trail, then you actually don't have to boardwalk that aspect of Westchester Street. You can just kind of circumnavigate it. And you can actually walk there.
So why did they change the name?
The last time I came in, it took just a while for the properties to be separated. So the last time I came in, it hadn't yet gone through the assessor's database and been formally separated from Mr. Cassidy's property.
Gotcha.
And so when they formally separated it and gave them 2 separate map and parcel numbers, it became 63 Nantucket Road. I don't.
So if you look at the one that has the red line,
I was
is
just curious.
the middle portion
Right.
was retained by the private landowner.
Exactly.
And the
Gotcha.
U around there, so they
Yeah.
at one point had the same 21 Crooked Lane
Address.
address and parcel. So when they
Right.
put this one off, because the largest amount of frontage is along Nantucket Road,
Right.
they assigned it to 63 Nantucket Road. So I feel like Joanne, Rachel, and I spent like the better part of 3 months
Too
going
much time.
over like how it was going to get recorded because of the addresses and maps and parcels and how the titles were
Gotcha.
running. But that's the explanation when I spoke to the assessors that they got is when they pulled it off. They felt it was
That's actually helpful. So the majority of the frontage is on Nantucket Road, so that makes sense. And 63 was apparently an available number.
yeah. So
Okay.
sometimes I feel like they just draw numbers out of a hat, but that seemed to. That was the explanation I got at the time.
There you go.
So where is the public going to park to access this?
So this is basically a walking property right now. We are exploring parking options. There has been none that have come to light as the obvious solution at this time, which makes it mostly a neighborhood property, or I think some people probably park at the offshore animal hospital, but maybe we won't tell them. We've evaluated we've been asked to look at a number of different parking spots, but there just hasn't been one that seemed safe or logical or like it was being a good neighbor. So we have yet to.
Tell you when we did our site inspections, we just park on the kind of the dirt
Side of the
extension of
road.
Westchester Street,
Yeah.
kind of off to the side. Looks like there are a few people that do that. So.
Right, right,
Westchester, to the best of my knowledge, is a public way.
right.
Yeah, it's to the best of my knowledge. I'm just gonna put that there.
I'll
out
tell you
there.
that is not entirely
True.
confirmed.
Okay.
So I just have a couple of questions about how these trails are being maintained. Like, are you guys using a ride-on mower?
No, we
Okay.
actually decided that was part of the planning process. In the process of looking at how we were going to construct these boardwalks, if you do a ride-on mower, it's much more intense construction, and you have to.
Okay, so you're going with something
Yeah,
smaller.
it's just going to be a walking property.
Okay, and that leads to my second question. The public, and I don't know if this is total misconception, thinks that land bank trails are all open for motorized vehicles, like dirt bikes and things, because Conservation
Really?
Foundation, has come out and like put signage. So it could just be a lack of education of your properties, but since this one is so wet, it worries me that people might try and use those sort of vehicles, so maybe a posting.
Yeah, I mean, we could post it, certainly. I don't know that I've ever seen a tire track out there.
I don't know that people know this exists yet.
Yeah. There's a lot of animals near there. It's like,
Yeah.
oh,
There's a
pasture.
lot of animals. There's actually
Right
a
now, there's a
big
ton of them.
residence on the property, so I think we'd probably hear pretty quickly if there's a motorcycle on
Yeah.
there.
Okay.
I would think
But I mean, if it's something that you have concerns about on other properties, that I would love to know about it.
I'm definitely seeing those and the electric bikes now that go
Okay.
pretty fast on the small trails.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, they're really,
Really?
becoming a lot more prevalent,
Okay.
unfortunately, in these
Well, we
sorts of
still
spots.
got the good old dirt bikes down by us, so.
Well, one of my students, I got dirt biking on land bank back there.
We have a dirt bike track. You could tell them that they can
Right.
use that.
Mm.
We have an actual dirt bike track, so they're more than welcome to go there.
Yeah, I'll remind them.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what should be on the sign.
Yeah.
Turn your bike.
Yeah,
Go
so
here.
this,
Go have fun.
this
Visit
proposed,
Mount
this proposed 130 feet already has a path that's all trumped in.
Yeah, all these trails have paths,
Yeah.
and the 285 5-foot
Yeah.
boardwalk there is really one the longest.
Yeah.
And if you don't tee that off of there, you're gonna step off into mud probably, so.
Yeah.
Jeff really felt like we needed to add this one.
Well, I was opposed to the original
Right.
notice, and I'm still opposed to this, and, you know, I see this as very different from other land bank parcels like Gardner or Stump Pond, where they've got a lot of trails that are, you know, dry enough to walk on, and some relatively short boardwalks to get over certain wet areas. But then you've got, you know, a lot of dry trail for just a little bit of boardwalk. Well, here, I think they're just in an area that's maybe too wet to have trails. I know this, you know, I know the land bank is committed to public access, and almost all their properties are, but I don't think that means all their properties have to be. And this might be a good property just to have as open space, protected, you know, more of a wild area.
Right, there's not a
That's
huge,
not my call, but I just think this is way too many boardwalks. And I know we had that, you know, I think all of us were on the commission, maybe not, when we had that property up in Pulpus, that they wanted to put a boardwalk across their wetland just so they could have a boardwalk, you know? And we denied that project, and I think it went to court, and it was upheld. And I think this is a similar situation where you've got a lot of boardwalks, just have a boardwalk so you can walk around in a circle, which I just have a real fundamental problem with this. And I feel like you know, I generally support the land bank, and I feel like a bit of a traitor here, but that's how I feel about this.
Not a traitor, a grump.
Everybody knows that.
I voted the same way as Ernie the first time, so I hear you there with the amount of boardwalks in a wetland.
Well,
yeah, I mean, you already got a loop there, so you can get around.
I like the idea of you opening it to the public so that they can actually access it.
Yeah.
And, you know, the island is getting fewer and fewer places where you can really experience it. So I applaud you in doing this.
I mean, I think it is good information for the land bank to know that, you know, if it's a real wetland area, maybe we should consider it as not a trail system. I will say that the difference between this property and some of those other ones is that maybe, well, that these were already pre-existing. So I think if these trails weren't here, I don't know if the land bank would purchase the property. That's sort of my theory behind it.
Pretty wet.
Because it's pretty wet, and I don't know that, I just don't, I can't speak to that. But
Yeah.
because the trails are pre-existing, you know, and we did basically decide to abandon this one down here. We're not gonna do anything down there because that is so wet. And
Well, Lily Pond, I don't mean to interrupt
No,
you,
it's totally
but
fine.
Lily Pond is a good example of where it's, you know, it's appreciated by the neighbors and by people who come into town alike. And I think on balance, it encourages people to appreciate our natural assets. And I think it builds in the long run, especially for the younger generation, an appreciation of what the land bank is trying to do and what there is to cherish on the island. So I really am for you doing this. So, and I interrupted you, I
no,
apologize.
that's okay. I appreciate you interrupting.
If it's helpful too, and not to interrupt or to try to push decision lines, our performance standards for vegetated wetlands actually call for elevated walkways over vegetated wetlands. So, and it just says elevated walkways determined to be water dependent, designed not to affect existing vegetation, shall be required for pedestrian passage over vegetated wetlands. So, if we want to go in a different direction, we have to have some very clear findings on why that performance standard is not applicable in this case.
Well, I don't think I said it in the original one, but
Actual rules.
at this point,
That's a
I
good
feel like
point.
it has to work, right? You don't want to step off the boardwalk into a,
Right.
I'm in favor of it, for sure.
Yeah.
And since the other project is already approved and this is really a small addition, I think it's kind of beating the wet horse that we now have. In that regard, I think, you know, this is a relatively minor expansion.
People will still trump through. Yeah. Okay.
But it is, I recognize that, there's some hesitation with this type of thing, and so it's good information for me to have going forward when we're doing property planning.
Okay. Any comments from the public on this one? Okay. Well, anyone like to make a motion?
Yeah, move to approve as amended.
Okay. Second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No.
This is a small section.
Oh, okay. So, that one passes with Commissioner Steinhauer opposed.
Thank you. Thank you, Rachel.
Okay, Rabbit Run Road 1 LLC and Rabbit Run Road 2 LLC. 22, 24, 26, Rabbit Run Road.
Brian Madden from LEC Environmental. Representing the applicants, this was a order of conditions that has been extended in last year. We were here for an amendment for new construction and rerouting of the portion of Rabbit Run Road. So this work is under construction right now. I believe Rabbit Run Road has yet to be rerouted.
Say that 10 times fast.
Plan that, Brad.
Is
it ready to be rewritten?
The garage and the footprint, I don't think this started yet. So this amendment request is for a pool. Pool is located here, north of the primary dwelling, located outside the 50-foot buffer zone. It will maintain a 2-foot separation of the groundwater. This proposed small bluestone patio around it, and pool equipment also outside the 50-foot. This is all within the previously approved limit of work. That's the extent of the request. Oh, one other thing I didn't mention. This is going to use automatic cover, so
It still boggles my mind how.
I'm in the wrong business, man.
Read about the disaster that happens
Oh,
this
God
summer
forbid.
and it'll be all done.
I don't know if
gonna
it's
be
worked, Brian, if
one
it's
accident.
covered almost all the time, then when they want to use it, they push a button and it retracts, they've used the pool, then when they're done, they recover it again, or?
I believe something to that effect. I don't know all this.
I will tell you, in my experience, all of the auto covers are completely user operated.
Yes.
So once it's open, unless you turn the key to close it,
Yeah.
it remains open. So it's totally driven upon responsible ownership.
They will be open July 1st.
They will
then
say
close.
to the covers, typically the switches are set at least, I want to say like 5 feet off the ground, so small children wouldn't be able to turn the key. But all the inspections that we've done,
Brothers.
there's no sensor or anything that's there. It is totally on the owner to operate that cover correctly.
I'm just surprised insurance companies are letting it go.
Shocking.
Right?
You're supposed to, I believe, also have a like door alarms, things like that. But
Somebody's dog.
I don't get to
or
do
kid is
inspections to that
drowned.
level. It would
Well,
be
there'll
something
be
like the
tons of
building
deer,
commissioner,
yeah,
but
drowned.
I would be suspect if all of those are installed and operating correctly as well. So
Every day.
that's not your guys' problem.
No, no.
So
I mean, I'm just like, seriously.
Sorry.
Okay. Well, with any other questions? Go ahead, as soon as not public. Would someone like to make a motion?
Well, I'm curious how it's going to be constructed. In other words,
Yeah.
my map, doesn't seem to be coming up very well.
Like how they
So-
physically get there.
Location-wise?
Yeah, location-wise and how they get
439.
get the machinery in there, and it seems to be it's pretty much surrounded by wetlands.
Yeah,
Snake
there's
around the
ample
property.
room on either side of the dwelling.
There is?
Yeah, in the limit of work is shown on there as well. That's all silk fencing.
Okay, mine doesn't seem to be coming up very well.
But the-
There's a good
439.
lines on the plan.
Oh, I guess so that's
Get around the right
house
side of
as
it.
it stands, and then I'm maybe
It's
looking
here,
at,
and then it runs.
Gotcha.
because they're right up to the
To where
50-foot
it's-
setback on one
where it's
side.
going.
On the house or the?
On the house, like if you were
Yeah,
getting
so
it's all
equipment
defined
around.
on the plan. Yeah, okay, that's what I would expect. Okay.
Yeah, I would anticipate them coming here. This is a little bit steeper over here.
I would throw out, this would have been an excellent candidate for a Highlander plan.
Wheelbarrows. Okay,
Thank you.
no problem.
Surveyor was earning his paycheck at the drafting pen with this one. Used as many lines as possible.
Okay, well, if you have someone that can make a motion?
Motion closed.
Do I have a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Can you guys make a motion to issue as well?
Motion issue. Oh, okay. Yeah, sorry, wrong one, yeah. Okay, motion issue, yeah, we got that.
I know it's
Very high.
persnickety, but it's the rules.
Very good. That was passed unanimously. Looking for rules. Okay, request for termination. Nantucket Island School Design and the Arts, 23 Wallwinnet.
Brian Madden from LEC. Pinch hitting for Bracken Engineering. Septic upgrade. The proposed system is going to have IA components. It's outside the 100-foot buffer zone in the back of the property. There's a boring vegetated wetland system abutting Wawinnet, connected to the culverts, although I didn't see any openings. To Eat Fire Spring that runs behind one of the existing barns. There's only a small amount of work activity within the 100-foot buffer zone for the septic tank. And there's erosion control barriers proposed within the existing lawn areas. That's the gist of it. Forest mains there, just a new extension to the proposed system. It has received board health approval.
Any questions? Concerns?
Nope.
Questions? Okay. Would someone like to make a motion to? Do you have a
So
recommendation
this
on
one, you would
Yeah,
be
fine.
issuing it as a -3, allowing for the work without requiring a notice of intent.
So moved.
Sorry. Sleep at the
All those in
wheel
favor? Any opposed?
there. Someday I'm gonna
Okay.
give you guys a
Passes
quiz on the
unanimously.
numbers for.
Someone
who's
has
that?
a
Good.
number on
Please.
it.
I actually almost said -3, and I don't know why.
Gotta be on your game. With RDA's, gonna make it crazy motions.
Because this one we didn't have to confirm the resource area boundaries.
Well, I was gonna ask you on this one, you guys going for the record for the most number of line knots? This is number 3?
We should. I'm gonna get that tattooed.
Yeah, we need a crib sheet.
Okay, minor mods.
You don't get a discount for like a half dozen.
Seats open.
When you get to 5 item mods, you should have filed an amended order, I think.
Are they all yours? Oh, okay. Albert 3 and Tamara Lee Rabil, 141 Cliff Road.
Thank you. On behalf of the applicant and property owner, Paul Santos from Nantucket Surveyors. This is a minor modification request, modification request number 3, actually, for work at 141 Cliff Road. This is an existing property that's been developed over the past few years, and the applicant is proposing to put in a synthetic putting green within an existing, currently this area is an existing manicured lawn area, which is surrounded by a post and rail fence that was permitted previously. They would be removing the existing lawn area and placing this synthetic putting green and associated perimeter fringe that goes with the putting green within the limits of the already disturbed lawn area. I did submit a cut sheet. It is a pervious system, so the system gets laid in. It is pervious, so there will be infiltration back into the underlying soil. And essentially what we're doing is replacing lawn with a synthetic putting green.
Is that because of rabbits and deer ravaging or?
That I do not know. I don't know whether this is just a product that works better with regard to, well, number one, to get a green, it would have to be a certain type of turf anyway to make it. But so this is a product that comes ready to go when you inlay it.
A lot of fertilizer as well.
What's that?
A lot of fertilizer.
Yeah, putting greens, I used to work at a golf course, and
Yeah.
they're high maintenance,
Yeah.
including
but they are.
fungicides and stuff like that, so this is probably better.
It's kind of random. It's
I
so
believe
close to
Skinner kept
the
his up
resource
and running
area.
with beer.
Well, what worries me is if there's a putting green, there's golf balls and golf clubs, and there's just, hey, can I drive it into the ocean? Like, that'll be happening all the time.
Yeah, thanks.
All the time. I just think it's an inappropriate placement.
Have to break conditions
I mean,
on
that's
that.
what people do. That's the unfortunate part
Well, you have
of
to use a
humans.
driver rather than.
But you know, if they're,
Yeah,
they
it's right on the rise
have
there.
tons of golf clubs.
That's what the beach stairs platform.
Yeah, that's what the platform for the beach stairs was.
We have to do an underwater survey in the next year.
There's a Seinfeld episode about that. That's right.
Yeah.
And then you go and have a coffee.
So that is the request.
Any questions or concerns?
Next thing you
On
know,
the
they'll be
putting
using
green?
it for clay pigeons.
Well,
As
that's
far
next.
as putting green's good, this is much less impact than a real putting.
Oh, I would think.
Yeah, exactly.
I would think.
Exactly.
Okay. Okay, someone like to,
I don't think we can have a camera to monitor it, unfortunately for you.
Just have a minor mod.
we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, any opposed? All right, we pass this unanimously.
Thank you. Well, we could require the golf balls to be tagged like the.
Bright orange, I can see them.
All golf balls will have an address on them.
They probably are. They probably will have someone's name on them. Okay, 22 Brewster Road, nominee trust, 22 Brewster Road.
Good evening, David Haynes for the applicant. This is the first minor mod on this project. The next one, I think we're getting to the record.
Looking very
What was-
spiffy, David. Looking very spiffy, if you know what you think.
What was proposed and originally was a shed with a porch, but the shed was gonna have a basement and a couple of retaining walls out the back, this back area.
A nice
And
shed.
now what the owner would like to do is eliminate the basement, eliminate the retaining walls, put the shed on sonotubes and slide it back a little bit. So it's no closer to the wetland boundary than structures that were previously opposed, being the retaining wall. And it's outside of 52 feet from the wetland boundary. The retaining walls were 52 feet from the wetland boundary. It is back farther, but this work eliminates the digging of a cellar hole, the construction of retaining walls, and any kind of excavation in the back part of the building. Just putting in a couple of sonotubes, putting it on that and building it on that. It's a little bit, the actual shed is closer. There were structures that were that distance that were approved, and this will eliminate all that earthwork. And there's much less work going on with this proposal than there was with the original, I feel.
That sounds all good.
Yeah.
Good.
Absolutely.
Move to issue the minor mod. Sorry, Andy.
That's a fine, right? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? They're very quiet.
Yeah, I know, I figured that was.
Okay, I do believe that one passed
We
unanimously.
know you paid them all.
Sounded pretty good.
That's why it's dressed so spiffy.
Is anybody opposed? I don't think so. LaRosso, 316 Pulpus Road.
Before I file, David Haynes again, before I file this, I asked them for 3 weeks. Any other changes you want to make?
What did they call you today?
Murphy's Law.
All we're asking for here is the back edge of the swimming pool. We had a fence proposed, it's the back edge of the patio, and when they started playing with the grades, they figured out they're gonna need a retaining wall back there that's 2 to 3 feet tall, maybe at the highest point. And so they'd like to put a retaining wall at that back line. Before there was a structure that was, the fence was going to be there. There still will be a fence there on top of the retaining wall, but we'd like to put a retaining wall, and that'll eliminate the need for any significant grading beyond the retaining wall.
And this is a pool fence?
Yes.
I'm
Excellent.
surprised they haven't decided
Well,
to remove it.
to see it.
I was about to say.
Give them a wall in.
Give him a wall. God.
So it's just on these,
This dark
It
line.
goes around.
does it go around on 3 sides, in fact, there?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Behind the cabana? or-
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. How high is it?
It's I think 30 inches at the highest point. About, I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just, so it's just over the 100?
no, the
Just
50.
past the
Where,
50.
I can't find it.
It's between the 50 and the 100.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Here's
all
the
good.
wetland back here.
Yeah, I see the,
The endangered species are over here.
Yeah.
The wetlands back here, and the, where's that line?
lines.
I'm seeing this 100-foot buffer there.
100, and the 50, this is,
Oh, this is the well 100-foot well buffer? What is that?
Yes, there are two
This-
well
this is
buffer
the-
zones
this is
shown
the
that make it.
one-
Okay, got it, I got it.
This is the 50.
All right, I gotcha.
So it's well outside of the 50.
Yeah.
But actually, the existing house and the existing well are are closer. The existing well is inside.
Yeah, it's just outside the 50-foot window.
Yeah.
With the
Let's
edge of that wall will be probably closer to 60 feet.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's getting as bad as looking at a traffic map of Paris.
Say, a little color, please.
Yeah.
Any questions? No, everybody happy? Everyone's happy in the public? Someone like to make a motion?
Move to issue the minor mod.
Do I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None, passes unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Nice.
Very good.
Thank you.
Vandenborn, 135 Wawinet Road.
For the applicant, Art Gasparo and Luke Donero is also here. We are before you tonight with a minor modification to approve the final structure based upon, final design from original permitting, getting through HDC, and we just wanted to get the, actual house plans to be constructed into your file. The footprint is essentially the same, very slight variation. The red line is what's proposed and the black line is what was approved for the interior part of the house. The porches and decks stay essentially the same with the exception of 2 more risers being needed to get up to the elevation that it's going to be constructed in the flood zone. And then we're also proposing to relocate the approved boardwalk to be closer in line with the existing path. As part of the HGC process, they didn't want the stairs coming out of the middle of the house. So they've been, or the center, excuse me, the center of the face, and the stairs that were approved by the HGC are much more in line with where the steps used to exist and the trail used to go down. So I think it's a improvement in terms of your protected interests as well. So there won't be the stairs or the approved walkway as shown in the black line, and instead it would be a more direct route shown in the red line along the existing trail. It's essentially the same length, and this one is an elevated helical supported fibergrate walkway.
We already removed the other extraneous boardwalks.
They were planks at grade, which have been
Yeah.
all washed around, and the contractor has told me that they've cleaned up an extraordinary amount of stuff out there as well. And the one other piece of things, I'm sorry, which is on the plan, is that we are showing an HVAC unit condenser on a bracket hung off of the house. So that hadn't been a part of the approved plan. It's on the opposite side, of this part of this vegetated wetland. There's an isolated wetland here, but they had very sort of limited options in terms of where that could go. And then we're showing the propane tank. So that's all the stuff in red are the minor mods, but again, it's sort of the final design that we wanted to be before anything was constructed. Some of those hadn't been fully developed when the initial permitting was developed. I'm going to believe it changes the scope or in any way has an adverse impact on protected interests.
So where do the lines from the propane tank go to the house?
They would be buried anywhere within that area that's already been approved for disturbance. So we've got a silt fence which is already up. And likewise, we're going to have that 4-inch PVC waste line that runs right along there. So there's going to be excavating, which runs to the tight tank.
Gotcha.
So there's going to be excavation and restoration in that area. And this will all be planted with beach grass.
Other questions, concerns? No? Concerns from the public? Nope. Okay. Someone like to make a motion?
Move to approve the minor water.
Second.
All those in favor? Any opposed? And passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Very good. Okay, certificates of compliance. 56 Monomoy Road, Realty Trust, 56 Monomoy Road.
So this is a very old certificate of compliance request for the construction of the home that's on the lot. And after reviewing the plans and having some recent work that's come in and having this outstanding, we've resubmitted kind of the as-built plan that came in as our recent request for determination to close out this permit, but the house is constructed in compliance in the approved locations as the original filing, and we would recommend the issuance of the certificate of compliance.
Move to issue, sorry, go ahead.
Do we have a second?
Yeah, move to issue.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously.
Jumping the gun on you there, sorry.
It's from the 1100s.
Okay, orders of conditions.
Oh, one second, guys. Take them, pass them down.
So, is this first one the one where, they agreed to keep the path on the higher side of the current path? Am I remembering this
Yes,
correctly?
this is the other non-land bank 21 Crooked Lane, actual 21 Crooked Lane, not 63 Nantucket Road. Billy Cassidy's remaining property
Oh, right. Yeah, okay.
where they had proposed the pool. We closed this at the last hearing. And looking back at the minutes, we had requested that the path be maintained by a string trimmer or weed whacker, whatever people prefer to call it. And then they had offered at the time to maintain the path on the driest side of the path.
Right.
Just, I think the way to.
Because that was a component to allow them to have the retaining wall into the 50. Was that the deal? I
Right.
just want to make sure that.
That's right. Yeah. It went around the retaining wall bumped out around like
Yeah.
a cabana or
That-
something like that.
It was on the end closer to the house. I have the plan with it if it's helpful for anyone.
No, I think I remember.
Yeah.
I guess for me, the kind of hitch is, will this area really be naturalized over time? Like, how are we gonna,
Well, yearly photographs.
yearly photographs for 3 years?
How are those
You
paths
know,
gonna
and
narrow
then,
in,
like, over time, there's still gonna be a retaining wall, but someone can start mowing this
I thought we
again.
asked for posts, though.
We did.
Didn't we? 4x4s? I thought there was some.
No.
No, I think it was just they were gonna abandon half of it. So that just
Yeah.
makes me a little bit nervous about how we structure that language to make sure that it
We could put the posts in.
happens. The
Now,
po-
is this,
I thought we did ask for markers to.
well, are you referring to the paths actually, trying to narrow them up and get them onto the
Right, because
outside?
wasn't that part of the deal to allow the work in the 50? They were gonna
Right.
give us square footage of the path,
Mm-hmm.
but
Yeah, I thought we were.
So can we mark and sort of mark and, I don't know if we've ever done any kind of like,
because it's not memorialized
Not
like on a
fencing
plan
so
where
much,
it's gonna be, so how do we know if it changes, you know?
yeah. But if you took the path that's the wettest part and posts with like some sort of wire, have we ever done anything like that to?
I mean, you could do posts. We haven't done that before. I mean, you could require a marker of some kind
Yeah.
periodically to know that it's not to be
do
crossed. But I think at the same time, on a path, I would be cautious of also impeding on the path. So I
Right.
think setting that or thinking about what a marker would be for that.
Yeah.
It'll be something. I mean, you guys will see it again for certificate of compliance and have the ability to carry that condition forward to monitor if you want to, or if you feel at that time there's more that needs to be done. I think you could have that discussion with the certificate as well. I think Art may have a question.
Mr. Chairman, for clarity.
Please.
The trail was gonna be 10 feet, now it's gonna be narrow, but it's linking to the land bank trails that you discussed earlier, which are all gonna be maintained at a narrower width as well. So who would ever really want this one piece of trail over that short distance to be wider anyway? I don't know that there's an incentive.
No, I
for
think it would just be
clarity of the overall setting.
some landscaper just cutting a pre-existing swash, I think would be more
I
realistic.
think Billy said it was him, the landscaper.
Oh,
He did
yeah.
all his mowing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No. I'd say we, monitor it. Make sure they narrow up.
And was thankful for just keeping it dry.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, okay, so no, what's the general thinking about markers? I mean, I agree, it's kind of hard to mark that. Doesn't seem like a,
I'd rather not see anything there.
Yeah.
Just have faith that he's
and
gonna
hope that it is,
keep it narrow.
yeah, we'll probably keep it narrow.
I mean, if we see that he's mowed the whole thing,
Yeah.
then we have to mark it.
Well, I suppose, do we want, I mean, can we put a dimension to the path, or is that something that?
Well, the plan of record clearly demonstrates that the path is to be a 5-foot maximum in width.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
I think,
I personally think it's fine without markers.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
As drafted.
I'll second that.
okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
All right. Passes with Commissioner Harrison opposed. Okay.
Yeah, we talked about just how difficult it was gonna be to actually confirm.
Yeah. I'll put it in your calendar a year from now. Walk.
I find violations every time I go for a walk, I feel like.
Yeah,
so.
I know. Okay. 15 Cathcart.
Oh, sorry, this was the past house barn.
Well, it sounds like the people who
Straightforward.
did the site visit were happy with it, so.
Yeah, it's
That's pretty well
pretty
done.
steep stuff. I mean, it's pretty, you can see why they went the way they went. Anybody have any suggestions, thoughts?
I have nothing to add.
Oh, here we go.
About the same as the last one.
Yeah.
Then in that case, I'll move to issue as drafted.
Do we have a second?
Second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Be opposed again?
Okay. Passes with Commissioner Harrisman opposed.
Jeff, can you refresh my memory on this?
Oh, so Penn Realty Trust is the lot out in Pocomo where there's a current system of sand-filled tubes, and they are proposing to replace it with a Wilkinson-style array.
All right.
So it's,
Did we go out and see that?
no,
No.
Okay.
well, some of us did.
Have we added a condition to this anytime recently?
Natural heritage, did they come out?
Yes, they are squared away with natural heritage. We've modified a few of these. The most recent addition is the one that the structure we brought back into compliance within 21 days of being damaged. Or if they need an extension from that, that they need to request that in writing from the commission. Was one of the newer ones that we've added. Other than that, they are fairly consistent with the last ones that we did a couple months ago. We haven't actually had, it's weird saying this, I feel like we had a big rush of them for a while. We hadn't had one in for a couple months until this one.
Is there something about, have these gone from synthetic
Yeah.
to core now, to a?
Correct. These are the ones that have included the
Or
core netting as opposed to the synthetic wrap.
Yeah.
Or excuse me, core wrapping instead of the synthetic wrap.
Right.
Because it's not netting.
So that's standard now. The debris on the beach has always been standard. The tagging
of
is
everything.
new, right?
success rates, standard.
Yes, and then they have to stake out high water mark to stay
Yeah.
landward of that for everything that's there.
Percentage survival. Okay. Move to issue as drafted.
Do we have a second? Oh, Joe did? Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
3 opposed.
Opposed. Passes with Commissioner Harrisman opposed.
should be monitored. It will be monitored.
Yeah, kinda.
No.
Sheep Commons LLC, 214 Pulpus Road.
This was the septic replacement.
Yep.
So I don't really have a lot of conditions outside of our normal,
No,
the Board of Health reporting.
straightforward. Someone like to make a motion?
Motion shows drafted.
Second.
All's in favor? Any opposed? Passes unanimously. This is J.J. McAtee Jr. This is 220 Pulpus Road. This is the pressure main.
This
Force
is
main.
yes, this is the septic replacement on Pulpus Road where they need to install the force main. So I was gonna suggest a condition 20.
The force main, oh.
The two of them.
226 is the one where the force main is existing.
Right.
So this is the install the force main.
This is all new, it's supposed to do.
Correct.
Yep.
From the discussion, I would suggest a condition 20 that reads, silt fence shall be installed for the entire length of the project.
Is there any other concerns?
Wait,
on this
excuse
one?
me. I want to clarify
Oh.
because length of the project could mean the time duration. Silt fence shall be installed along the driveway, the entire driveway. For the length of the project. It's a bad word choice for me. Length is one of those tricky words that can be for linear or for time.
All of it.
So,
Okay. Other concerns? Someone like to make a motion as amended?
Issue as amended.
Do we have a second? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? And passes unanimously. And we got same property, well, not same property. Same location, same project, sort of. J.J. McAtee, 226 Pulpus Road.
this is the one that was the existing force main.
Yeah.
So I think I would stick with what I wrote in this case.
They had a silt fence around the work area.
Correct.
Moved issue is drafted in this one?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. So 20 Fallings Mill.
Yet another septic replacement.
Seen a lot of them.
Health department must be busy or something.
Upgraded a septic, IA. All good.
Should have bought stock. Septic tech years ago.
You should have seen it coming, Jeff.
We've been in conflict every time we had one. We have to
They've been around
accuse
for a while.
yourself.
Yeah, Wilkinson, I know. Did Wilkinson go public?
Do we have a motion?
Moved issue as drafted.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Passes unanimously. '72 Pockmore Road.
This was Brian Mann's project tonight that was for the revegetation work and the regrowing. just to run through them quickly. There's the report with photographs. It's beginning and end of the growing season. It needs to be filed yearly. No cultivars in those areas. There's the 22s. Prior to the start of work, the applicant needs to file an agreement that demonstrates that a contractor has been engaged to perform the vegetation restoration and management that includes monitoring and any replanting for the full term of the permit. Shall include a performance bond or similar covering the cost of the restoration and monitoring. For the irrigation, movable stands need to be removed. Does any debris that's there cleaned up? Invasive species shall be treated, and then those permanent markers installed. Sorry, I kind of paraphrased a few.
Wasn't this one where they're basically gonna let it regrow?
Yeah.
Yep, there's the
Yep,
one
except for
planting
one
area
area.
that they had that I wanted to make sure we were covered. And I also, even in areas that we regrow, I try to leave flexibility in the order that if during the reporting we see that they need to do some replanting to supplement it, that instead of having to amend permits, we can just say, go fix it, go plant it, and then they are covered by the permit already with protocols to do that.
So what's the fire protection?
The fire protection is if you look at the,
There's a pit.
there's a pit up near the house. It's a little tank that's installed because there's no town water service up there. So they have a little like cistern that hooks to their wells for fire protection.
And they use their phone booth to call if it's a problem.
I'm not sure there's actually a phone in that phone booth anymore. Last time I drove by, it was already empty, but it's still there.
Just curious, just say this wasn't approved, does the violation get transferred to the next owner, or does that?
Violations run with the property, they do not run with the owner.
Okay.
I will tell you though that as there's a property transferring, if you hit someone with an enforcement order and they close on their property the next day, my guess is the call backwards would probably not be that fun for covers. But if you purchase a property in violation, you are purchasing that violation. So I would encourage anyone considering buying a property to do their homework thoroughly to make sure that you are not buying
Due
violations.
diligence.
Well, I was giving them calls the other day, and I said that violation is gonna go with it, and they're gonna have to restore it, so.
Oh, yeah.
And I told them to call you.
Yeah, so it's one of the reasons why.
Confirm that, but I just thank you.
It's one of the reasons why I like using orders of conditions in situations like this, and even through enforcements, because that order has to get recorded against the title. So then, if it does transfer a year from now, anyone who's doing their due diligence and looking back at the title would say, "Oh, hey, there's an order of conditions on this property. What's it for?" And then we'd go back and go, "Oh crap! For this, it needs to get fixed, or it's not fixed." But then that runs with the property, and even if you get a certificate and record the certificate of compliance, the order of conditions isn't leaving the record. You can still bring it up and look at it. It's much more permanent than enforcement actions, which typically aren't recorded. The other ones that I don't like it that we don't see recorded a lot, people that get negative order of conditions don't typically record those, even though they're kind of supposed to. But I'm not surprised at that. So,
Yeah, they're trying to see how much to sever out of the.
yes.
And put into an escrow.
No, we see that on occasion. We've had a few properties like that where people are like, "Well, I'm just going to buy it and I don't have to worry about it because I'm new." Nope. Sorry. The act and bylaw are both very clear that you inherit your problems of previous owners. So, do your due diligence if you're buying.
That makes sense.
Okay.
I've heard great stories of people that do like vista cutting and things when they go to market their house to have this great view, and then you get it and there's just problems behind it. So
And it's not eroding out there at all.
it's totally wrong.
Sorry, I have to get off the topic.
Okay, did we?
It's good information to know.
Someone like to make a motion?
New dish is drafted.
Do we have a second? Okay. And all those in favor? Any opposed? That passes unanimously.
Last one is 137.
137, yep, Yumbalig. This is the pool. With a fence. On a wall. Perfect.
There's a fence.
Yeah, this is the one with the deer fence going through the wetland.
Yeah, that's in there, right?
So, on this one,
Yep.
it's our normal pool conditions with the exception of number 23,
Yep.
where it says the deer fence shall be removed prior to the installation of the pool.
Great. Okay. Do we have a motion?
Issue is draft.
Second? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously.
Well, kids don't get offense, no one's
Okay, other business.
We got the biz.
Conveyance of property, signing of deeds.
Oh,
3
yeah.
Baltimore Street.
All right, so I'm going to give you guys a little bit of background. I know there's a gentleman from the public who's here as well, if he may be able to help with questions. So there are a few properties that are owned by the town, care of the Conservation Commission. And sometimes those properties get used as part of land swaps or transitions between groups and things. So this is one, hopefully I get this right, and I have a motion for you guys, for someone to kind of read for what it's supposed to be. But this land swap has been authorized by a couple different town meetings to switch some land between the Nantucket Land Trust and the town of Nantucket. This is a piece of 3 Baltimore. It kind of runs behind Millie's and in between a couple roads. And it has been swapped for, and correct me if I'm wrong, for the beach access point at the end of Chicago Street, where there's the little parking lot. In this switch from town property to Nantucket Land Trust and Nantucket Land Trust to town, I feel like has been in the works since like 2014, 2015. It's been a while. And they got to the point where deeds and things were ready to be signed, and then they were doing their last check and realized that the property was also care of the Conservation Commission. So it requires an endorsement from the board to make that swap official. We don't normally recommend them if it swaps to private homeowners and things, but as it's a land trust that is focused also on conservation in exchange for public beach access, I know that was the kind of the driving force with the town. So if anyone has any questions, I'll try to answer them. If you want to add anything, you can feel free. I think I cover it. I feel like we've met on the site and we've talked about it for years and years and years. But it gives the town a little better access to the beach in exchange for a parcel that's really not very usable other than for just open green space that's being planned to be left in open green space. So I think it's an excellent switch.
Need a vote or something?
Yeah.
Yes, so
Okay.
I would suggest that someone move that the Conservation Commission vote to transfer the care, custody, management, and control of the property located at 3 Baltimore Street, shown on Land Court Plan number 3092-67 as Lot 695, filed with the Nantucket Registry of Deeds of the Land Court, to the Board of Selectmen for purposes of conveyance to the Nantucket Land Trust as authorized by vote of Article 101 of the 2015 Annual Town Meeting and pursuant to Chapter 165 of the Acts of 2016, and further authorize the Conservation Commission to take such action as may be necessary to effect the purpose of this vote.
You got that, Terry?
Oh, yes, I remember.
Motion.
I will email it to you, Jeff.
Jeff just said.
We have a second.
Big yellow note here. Get that email.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good.
All right.
That passes unanimously.
All right.
That's what happens when you give it to attorneys to make a
I was
motion.
about to say,
You get
my
these
God.
long, drawn out words.
Very thorough, very
You have to say give up the property.
All right.
Yeah.
thorough. Both.
So now, once this gets executed and recorded, that land swap will be official. So the town will take possession of the parking area at the end of Chicago Street. The Land Trust will get a much nicer piece of land that people don't drive all over all the time. I think everyone will be in a better spot. And I
Very
would say
good.
thank you to the Land Trust for being patient, and extremely helpful
Good.
in these areas.
Dewatering permits.
So I wanted to bring this one back because we had a request and the pipe was in for tomorrow and Friday to clean up some utility installs as part of the building project there in the Washington Street extension, where the original dewatering had been permitted to go into the catch basin that discharges into Council Springs. And in this case, they have requested to pump into a settling infiltration tank and then discharging it to Council Springs instead of into the road to go into Council Springs. So it was a little bit of a bone of contention before the window requested ends on Friday. I wanted to at least bring it here for you guys to say okay or no, and then we'll go from there. So if people have questions, I'm happy to answer them. Department of Public Health signed off on their application, as did Department of Public Works. And Public Works, I'll even say, was the one that initiated the request to not pump into the road on that busy corner.
So where's the settling pond gonna be?
The tank is located on the parcel that has the construction project.
So it's a settling tank?
Yeah, it's just a big, it looks like a big dumpster, honestly.
Okay.
Interesting. And it settles out. It's very similar to the one that was next to the old Cumbies when they were pumping there, and pumping into the ditch up at kind of across the street in the Phragmites Marsh that's there.
Arsenic filter would be better than pumping into the road and then.
Well, the thing that came up and we talked about to no end is this option looks horrific. I will be the first to admit. The catch basin that gets pumped into has a pipe that goes from the catch basin directly into Council Springs.
Right.
Right.
That's what I'm saying. Is it arguable that the settling tank is a better option? Because
I would say
it's
yes. And you're not picking up whatever's coming off of the road and into there. And it's for 2 days. So given the length of what already happened, but we didn't want to put it forward without you guys at least being in the know or in the loop. I know we'd like to, what's that?
Do we need to vote on this?
No.
No, you can.
Just letting us know.
You can simply, well, if you guys say this sounds like the worst idea ever, we can definitely
That sounds like a good idea.
I don't know where
put
else
a
to
halt to
put
it.
it.
So
I think the worst idea ever was the development where that's
Down
needing
there.
to be
So-
dewatered.
I know,
I would say, I know that,
plenty of that.
I know the town's engaged a consultant to deal with groundwater discharge regulations because these dewatering situations are a little of the Wild West, and the system that's in place is total Wild West. Just for the fact that right now people go around and they get permits where we probably have the most involved in areas that are within Concom jurisdiction because we may have actually approved a temporary dewatering situation. But if they're not within your jurisdiction, I will say it and the microphone can pick it up. There are no regulations that guide that outside of state regulations. There are no local town regulations, but people go around and they get a sign off from Public Works to tie into the storm drain and health department. But there's no real formal process and there's no real like teeth to enforcement if there's an issue. Hopefully before the end of the year that will be rectified and these situations will go away in permanence or have a much more formalized process to go through to get to the situation we're in. But dewatering is sadly probably here to stay because anywhere you are, especially downtown or in the Brand Point area, even to put a crawl space in, with groundwater being as high as it is, you're seeing it to some degree. So getting a better process involved and vetted through the public and hopefully local engineers and groups will contribute when those regulations come up for review. Will make the process better and avoid situations like this.
Good job. Very good. So approval of minutes. Everyone happy with the minutes?
Yes.
Very.
Excellent. Approved by unanimous consent. Monitoring reports?
I don't think we have any this time. We just leave it on there just in case they come in late.
Yep. Enforcement actions?
We talked about a couple of notices tonight. We had we sent out a violation, a potential violation notice to a property at 24 Sacajah Road. I believe that address is correct. It's either 24. We met with that homeowner on site. It's the property that it kind of spans Quinnet Road and Sacajah Road. And it's an area that the owner today directed us that they've been speaking to Mass Audubon about managing the property. And the name they did some cutting that they said they had been doing as part of an annual mow. And someone from off island from Audubon is coming over in the next 2 weeks. So we said, before we go too far, let's all of us get together at the site again with the folks from Mass Audubon and let's figure out what's going on, because it seems to me that the cutting is more extensive than it has been.
Well, can I clarify? Well, so
Yes.
that property, this is an interesting property because way back in the day, it used to be a meadow. And when I first got here, I got harassed about, can we cut this? Can we cut this? Because it's supposed to be a meadow. It always was a meadow. And so we went around and around about, no, it's supposed to be habitat, it's supposed to be avian habitat. But now in recent years, it's just totally been taken over by porcelainberry and Oriental bittersweet. So, we thought, well, rather than having all that stuff spreading throughout all the dunes down below it and stuff, probably better to have him mow it. So he's got permission to mow it, mainly to keep the bases down. But there is a problem because there's that little wetland right there.
Yes.
That is mainly full of loosestrife, but it's still a wetland. And we've told him, look, you've got to get that delineated and, get the buffers marked. But he's very reluctant to do that.
Well,
Mowing it's cheap, but.
his tune was very different today when I was out there with Joanne and JC, and he was, Audubon's coming out, we'll all get together, this is great, let me know what forms I need to fill out, and I was like, okay, we'll all get together.
Just come along and tell him that, no, this is a wetland, and
So
I gave him Brian's name, and
so we're gonna kind
it is done,
we're gonna kind of steer him in that path because of some of the history that's there, but that's kind of the one that's most outstanding at the moment. We have a couple other ones we're trying to follow up on. That we'll have a better report at the next meeting on.
Is 290 Pulpus one of those?
290 Pulpus, we were speaking with those folks today.
Because, man, they are doing a lot of stuff out there.
Yes. So they're missing a silt fence right now and
Yeah,
a few
they
other
are.
things. So
And they have big piles of brush. I guess I'll wait for commissioners' comments.
no, but that we've been in an ongoing, like every other day discussion with the folks out there.
Right, because I
So,
reported it like 6 or 8 weeks ago.
Yes. So
Well, the bad news is we've got a new person at Audubon now. It's going to be doing that CR, so this will be his first time on it.
it'll be good.
Yeah, what an introduction.
So I wish I remember his name, but I don't. He said it once, and I was like,
The Audubon guy?
yeah,
I don't know him, so.
no. What's funny, as I mentioned, is like, have you guys worked with Ernie Stanauer at all? And the guy was like, the name sounds very familiar, but I don't really recall. So
Okay.
that's it for those.
Reports, CPC?
Well, Barry Rector lost the vote
Did he?
for planning board, yeah. So he was the representative for the planning board on CPC.
He's been on the planning board for a long time.
So
20 years.
who's on?
Wow.
Was it Dave Iverson?
Dave Iverson?
Yeah,
Yeah.
actually,
So I don't
I
know
hadn't heard that.
who's going to take his place.
Yeah.
Maybe,
Oh, I'm sorry.
but, right,
Yeah.
so, otherwise nothing.
Wow.
Maybe someone is clamoring to take that spot.
Clamoring. Okay, MPDC, nothing. I don't think
Barry
it's-
Rector also not on NPC
Yeah.
Right. anymore.
No,
Right.
got some free time.
It's a whole new world out there.
Yeah.
Commissioner comments?
Just one, so on your point, Ashley, about the landscapers needing to be sort of held to task on this stuff. I think an informational, like, packet from some Probably from you, Jeff, honestly, maybe funded by somebody else if there's no funding available.
Well, we
but,
have funding.
like, it'd be
for
very,
education.
it seems easy to put together, you know, don't do this kind of like vista pruning or clearing of land, a couple of pictures, like if you do this, it's sort of on you message. We have the lists, we have the list
Yeah.
from, you know, the fertilizer.
We definitely collect them from fertilizer, so.
We have tons of emails. I mean, I think that like a campaign would be, it's time.
Sure.
It's time, but then there needs to be fines. You
Yeah,
know,
I mean,
because
I
just
think-
the like, don't do that. It's
Right.
not working.
Well, maybe there's some sort
Yeah.
of, I don't know, a threat of a fine. I don't know how you word it, but I think a lot of people still don't really know what to pay attention to, honestly.
It's terrifying.
Yeah.
Well, we've been circling around the idea of increasing the fines for how many
Yeah, I mean, I think the
years?
fine thing has to happen for sure, but I think,
we had
I
any
think we need an
movement on that?
education.
Sure. Do you guys want all of that for the next meeting?
That'd be great. See
Yeah.
something.
That's certainly doable.
'Cause
So,
Yeah.
Like a whole week, exactly.
So I have a commissioner's comment, which was, we were walking down at the Mass Field Station, we went down on the beach and walked along the beach, you know, where sort of Barrett, and is it Barrett, Bassett Lane and Quays Lane run
Yeah.
parallel?
Yeah.
That's quite impassable now.
That's eroded severely down there now.
Yeah, and also I think there was work taking place on a house there, and I think it's 31 Quays Road, and it's certainly within 100 feet, I mean, of the beach, but and I don't remember them coming before us, and I don't know to what extent, you know, it looks like they should have come before
Oh,
us.
is this the one with these are placing windows and shingling and stuff?
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know if he's done anything other than just maintenance on this house.
so maintenance.
I don't know if
is-
they're expanding on it. I don't think.
no, we can take a look. I mean,
Yeah.
we
Well,
can.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's
You know,
active. I noticed that.
I'm wondering how we can guarantee access, you know, along the beach at low tide, because I don't think there's any access there even at low tide anymore.
It's
Does
tight.
Does this have a,
Yeah,
We've
it's,
got bulkheads.
erosion control
That
structure
might
in it?
mean
Huh?
the others.
Yes,
contact.
yes it
That's
is,
your
yeah,
point, okay.
and it's hard armoring.
Oh, yeah.
It just, you know.
Was it permitted by us?
I suppose it must have been originally, back in the day. I mean, it's all old stuff.
Yeah, I just wonder if walkable beach was a component of it, though.
Yeah, it's hard
Right.
concrete.
no, it's poured
There's some
concrete.
There's
Yeah.
everything
Yeah.
down there.
It's pretty
My
old. The
brother
whole
was
stretch
actually
is a
mentioning
lot of old.
It's just such a mess. you know,
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
just
yeah.
so
Relic bulkheads
unfortunate.
and things.
Yeah, no, I get it.
And so we completely powerless there.
Well, I don't think we have the ability to
Retroactively.
necessarily order it removed.
Something else.
Yeah.
Right.
Then it's a different story.
Right.
It's
But
been a
just
lot.
even steps to walk across it, you know, if they have to come before us
Didn't we
at
come
some
across
point.
this on, it was like a chapter, what's it, chapter 91 thing? You had to like, in order to get access over this, it fell into chapter 91 territory or something?
So it can. It depends if it requires a license from waterways.
Yeah.
So I haven't encountered too many where it's a structure that was constructed without a license and didn't require a license, where it's become a structure that then would require a license if it were new, and how they've treated those. I know.
Are they all
seen anything
chapter
like that?
91 compliant?
No, well, my guess is a lot of these don't necessarily, when they're constructed, require a 91 license, especially ones that
They're
are
well above the high tide.
old because they're constructed outside of the high tide line. Or they're not directly on, like, clearly filled tidelands or things, so.
Right.
Dealing with old bulkheads is, I mean, it's something I wish DEP would put out some guidance with at some point, because at some point it's gonna come up. But,
But I mean, it's even gonna come up with our newer structures. As beaches shift,
Right.
we're gonna create a lot of unwalkable.
but that, I will admit,
I
that
mean,
stretch at
that's
Quays Road
really
does have a
very
lot of very hard structures.
So it's quite a collection.
Anyway.
At least with the new stuff, the language is written in.
Yeah.
Right.
And I just have one comment, and I guess it's back to like some of those enforcement orders. So when they get a message sent, is it not a like stop work?
Well, when they get sent an enforcement action, yes.
Okay.
So the other ones that we send, just like a potential violation, we tell them to stop the activity until they contact the office, just to go through it, and then we all send those out certified to make sure that they get them. And we typically get contacted within at least a day or two of receipt. Someone usually gets in touch with us. Most of the time when you catch up with them, like the brush cutting out in Sacagawea, the work was done by the time we got out there. I'm sure the work took them a day to do, but then kind of catching up behind that.
Because I guess I was surprised to drive by 290 Pulpus, and I was like, oh, now they're digging. Like, at least they have their permit number up for an old septic permit, but I was surprised they'd made progress with all of those brush piles in the wetlands. And then it was clear on my drive-by, like, no, they don't have a silt fence there either, but there's all these piles of sediment. Like, what's happening here?
Yes, we will have that completely resolved before the next meeting.
So that area on Sacagawea Road, they've also got a drainage problem where it kind of drains down that hill on the ocean side of that little place, and it's been dumping, in heavy rains, it dumps sediment into the wetland.
Yeah.
It's got a spring there too, right? It's spring fed too.
That little pond.
In the wetland there, there's a.
It must be because it's isolated there.
Can I make one quick comment?
Please.
Just to thank you guys for having a discussion about Matthew Springs, because I know the dewatering is a little bit of a mess, and maybe there's no real difference of putting it directly into the storm drain, but as someone who's kind of on Jeff's case about that particular spot a little bit, I just appreciate having you guys know about it and talk about it when there's gonna be a direct discharge, because I had a lot of people asking me about that pipe. Oh, did the Concom approve that? And I was like, well, kind of, but I don't know if they really know that it's happening, and so I just think it's appropriate when there's gonna be a direct, obvious discharge like that for you guys to be aware of it. Thank you.
Hopefully this is the last gasp. Hopefully we'll be.
Okay, and then a motion to adjourn? All in favor?
Aye.